Orange
ODM
Party's
wants...
powerful PM drive sparks new debate over BBI report. It would be interesting to look at the details and who was spinning what narrative.
Dialogue. The party says the BBI process is consultative and no party or individual should dictate the process or outcome. So
the stand of the most popular opposition party that was key in the passage and adoption of the BBI report by Kenyans came just a day after Mount Kenya leaders allied to President Kenyatta also vouched for a powerful PM. One of the two deputy PMs, a meeting chaired by the opposition chief Raila, said should be less than 45 years old, a move meant to win youth support. So I don't know, were these folks at the same meeting?
opposition leader Raila Odinga's ODM has abandoned the quest for a powerful prime minister, citing the need to embrace different views in order to rally broad support for the Building Bridges Initiative report.
Now, interestingly enough, sources at the 5-hour closed-door ODM parliamentary group come National Executive Council meeting told the nation and the leader suggested that a powerful premier should be appointed from parliament.
And the Standard says, after they emerged from that meeting, the Secretary General Edwin Sifuna read a statement and said, even though that's what we presented and wanted when BBI was going around the country, we must, however, be able to listen and accommodate to the views of Kenyans who presented different opinion. That's what Edwin Sifuna said.
Well, it looks like the ODM leader had more to say on the subject, and he said, let's take the second chance as an opportunity to throw off a legacy of corruption, tribalism, divisions, dysfunctional institutions, and mistrust that have held us back for over 50 years.
Okay.
This
Same
thing-
meeting.
Two different outcomes.
This whole process from the second
very,
chance.
very many opinions.
This thing has been choreographed.
Which one exactly?
All of it is
All of it
choreographed.
is-
So it's meant to be confusing like this, and then they come out and say, they gauge the people.
Well, remember when we had Mr. Mwangi here, the one thing that the impression I got was that we were in for further discussion on this matter. Because there were issues you'd raise and they say, no, that wasn't actually, nothing was firmed. Meaning, there were issues that were left open-ended, as they say. And when something's open-ended, it means it's open for further discussion.
Right.
So we are in for further discussion. That's the choreography I'm talking about.
Yep.
Hey, okay. Lead by example, MPs tell Uhuru on the conflict of interest issue. So this is MP saying, well, if you want us to talk about conflict of interest, remember this is what the Jamhuri Day speech by President Uhuru Kenyatta, where he said leaders, especially those elected, should focus on the fact that they've been elected and work on what they are supposed to do as state officers and abandon their private practice. Especially he's talking about if you're teachers, doctors, lawyers as well. So they have come out guns blazing. The leaders who are supposed to be debating that conflict of interest bill, they're already showing what they're going to think about. Omar Bay Town MP Opondo Kaluma says the president is overstretching the principle by suggesting that MPs who are professionals should not be engaged in private practice, even for free. Meru Senator Mithika Linturi says, does it mean that when Murkomen, that's a Senate Majority Leader, represented him during the petition and Senator Kithure appeared at the ICC, there was no conflict of interest then? Has it become conflict of interest when Murkomen is representing Governor Sonko in court? I think the president is a master of doublespeak. Is according to the Meru Senator Mithika Linturi.
This is what is said.
He then goes on to say, the president that is, that you're too blind to see my efforts. That's the president. He says the SGR has decongested Mombasa port, reduced time for freight transportation and enhanced delivery of transit cargo. That's President Uhuru Kenyatta, and he lamented about the harsh assessment of his administration's performance, regretting that some of its achievements have not been acknowledged. So the president, who spoke at the launch of the Syokimau Standard Gauge Railway freight services, appeared disappointed over the bad publicity his government was receiving. Surprise, surprise. Of course, there's been so much politicking, and that's clouded some of the achievements that the government has achieved.
Whose job is it to tell the people about the government's achievements?
It is the government's job. But,
and have they done a good job of it?
No, they haven't. No, they haven't.
The communication has been wanting.
And they've gotten involved in the politicking and the back and forth and so on, as opposed to the performance communication that needs to be consistent, because it's very easy for us to get otherwise entangled in the politics. Of course, it's more exciting and more highly charged. I follow the politics more than the achievements. And with the achievements, really, what are you reporting? Unless something has been launched, there's really really no story about it. The way to go about it, I think, would be to get specialists, economists to sort of report on the socioeconomic growth around a project and so on. So through documentaries, perhaps. I know there was a task force that launched a publication by the government. It's a free newspaper, I think, to try and paint the government in good light. This had David Makali. Have I said Makili or Makali? Makali. And it received a lot of sort of criticism from the likes of Itumbi, who, of course, himself has been in the communications team since the beginning of this administration, so since 2013, and probably responsible for the trust deficit that we see. So for him to come and accuse anybody of who's trying to fix this situation is quite... when you talk about doublespeak, that's what doublespeak is.
That's where it comes.
And of course, there have been the presidential communication team, they've been otherwise engaged in politicking, sadly. And so the performance is not well communicated.
I think just like we've seen with the former president, Mwai Kibaki, once the President Kenyatta leaves office, that's when people are going to start appreciating what he did when he was in power. When Mwai Kibaki was in power, it was constant politicking. Oh, the Kibaki, remember 2007, he led us to the brink of war.
What about in his first term?
Even in his first term, it was all about he reneged on the MOU and all. After he left, that's when he started talking about, you see what Kibaki did, infrastructure, economic growth. And I think the same thing is going to happen. Once Uhuru leaves office, all these efforts, the SGR coming all the way from Mombasa to Suswa, the inland container depots, the congestion of the roads, the peace efforts as well, because you can give it to the president. One thing that he has constantly talked about is we should never go back to fighting. We will remember that after he leaves office and we'll be looking back and seeing, the man tried.
I think we can actually feel the benefits of the handshake in terms of the political tensions have died out. I feel a lot more unified as a country. If you remember, there was actually utterances of secession after the last elections. That's clearly not the case. The country is definitely more united. There's no doubt about that.
Still on the front page of The Nation. Titi, you wanted to go ahead?
Well, I was just going to say that the Star has reported that the DCI has categorically stated that they did not summon the musician or the rapper, King Kaka. Have I got it right?
Kaka
Yes.
King.
Yes.
King Kaka.
King Kaka.
Yes. They didn't summon him. And they've also warned anybody using using the DCI's office or using a platform, they says they will face dire consequences.
Right.
Somebody called King Kaka, that's what he
Somebody
says.
called him,
Somebody called him, and someone says, and I think that's where the DCI should actually even follow this up by saying, this is how we summon people, so that
I reckon it was Boniface Mwangi because he needed a platform, he needed a circus.
If someone,
because he
today,
he
Jerry,
then
if someone
called-
calls you and tells you, this is DCI, you come here quickly, and we know where you live, and even tell you your
I'll say, can you
address.
send me an email, please? With your email address. Then I would know it's you. But
Yeah.
I think the person who set that up perhaps was Boniface Mwangi because he did enjoy the attention that came with it. He was calling for people to all meet and congregate at the DCI, and they wanted to cause a bit of drama, and they got the media attention and publicity that he so enjoys and needs to sort of clock in with his donors.
Why not the other lawyers who also joined that? Why not everybody else?
Just my hunch.
The DCI should follow this up by saying this is how we summon people. Because clearly, if you had actually been the one who had released this song and you have all this talk about you around the country, and then you receive a call by somebody who sounds stern and says, I'm DCI and I know where you live, come, you panic.
You got to love Kenya for the drama, though.
You panic.
Say that
And then
again.
you wonder.
But what is of interest, it seems to be something that our high-ranking officials in this country seem to do very well.
Right.
Ignoring, I'm going a little off tangent, ignoring court summons. Apparently, the court, Justice Majanja, issued arrest warrant for the Treasury PS1, Julius Muia. And the reason? There was this little issue of Child Welfare Society accounts held at Equity Bank, and they had wanted to reopen, and the court had said, no, we will not reopen it. Now, the PS did not adhere to the summons, so a warrant of arrest has been issued. Yes. Let's see whether he actually gets arrested.
Hey,
Voila.
There was confusion yesterday. NTSA, Modern Coast, so Modern Coast issues a statement saying, we've been given the green light to start operating, so you're safe. And then NTSA says, we have
Actually,
not
no.
released any. And then later NTSA says, we have just done some inspection of the number of buses. 33 buses so far have been found to be compliant. So those 33 are okay to start operating. As we continue inspecting the other. Confusion galore.
Well, of course, all against the backdrop that people want to travel and people have booked their tickets. And
People
I
are
think they was
stranded.
trying to, people are stranded. People thought that they would be able to leave Mombasa, leave Nairobi, etc., etc. And having paid for that, I think they were trying to manage the situation as best they can. So somebody was seen. On the front page of the Daily Nation, still concern over rising university student deaths. And it takes 2 pages. Many students in their prime are dying on university campuses, taking with them the hopes and aspirations of their families and entire communities. So there's a worrying trend of deaths, whether they're from suicide, whether they're as a result of riots. And this is across the country, from Moore University to Nairobi University to Chuka University, as what we see. And looking at like Kipia University as well, like I said, through the country, and there have been accidents whereby now it's cause for some concern, because as the data has been collected, quite a high percentage of these young people are dying. So.
Yesterday was International Day to End Violence Against Sex Workers. And in Nakuru, there was a pomp and fanfare as the celebrations were marking this day. So Nakuru commercial sex workers joined the Nakuru Town East Police Commander Elena Kabukuru and the Central Police Station boss Derek Nyaga in planting a tree at the station to mark the International Day to End Violence Against Sex Workers. The sex workers under the umbrella Smart Ladies conducted a cleanup at the station before donating mattresses, buckets, water tanks and brooms at Bondeni and Central Police Stations. And they also presented new curtains to the police commander's office.
That's very interesting.
Good gesture.
To the police. Right.
They donated mattresses to the police station.
Right. City. Okay.
There's this little matter that I think has been in all 3 papers, the passing away of Justice James Odek. Yes, they say mystery surrounds it, and mystery still does. Apparently he was found naked, and there was blood oozing all over from his ears. They say it's private parts. There are many other details, but again, there's nothing conclusive.
Still don't know why.
No, they're not even saying what. I guess a postmortem will be able to indicate to us, tell us with greater clarity what it is that he caused his death.
Of course, what's important to note is he had been called on as a witness.
A state witness,
a state witness for the Mumias case. So when we're looking at sort of possible motives, these are things we have to keep in mind. I suspect foul play from the get-go.
Of course, because Mumias is directly related to a favorite topic of yours, isn't it?
No, I haven't said anything of the sort. I mean, they could be all manner of things. You have the Supreme Court judges, they'll be retiring soon, so there's the sort of succession plans there. Who knows what sort of tussles were going on internally within the judiciary. But hopefully the judiciary do take this very seriously. It's one of their own, and they do secure a conviction and make sure whoever was responsible for his death, if anybody, is brought to book and faces the full force of the law.
Starts with the investigating agency first, right? If they get it right, then you have a strong case. If they bungle this one, we'll have a problem. Continuing. It's 19 minutes past 6 o'clock. This is The Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation on this 18th day of December 2019. Of course, we're starting our conversations. We've been taking a look at the headlines in the main dailies this morning. Remember, you can download the Standard e-paper app from Google Play Store and Apple App Store. Just one subscription fee. You get to access all of Standard Group's publications and the pullouts. Today's pullout in the Standard is The Hustle. So you just get to access that and read it. Good morning.
spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
6:20. Good morning. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room, we have Nyeri Thorn Nduoko. My name is Eric Latif, and we have CT Muga.
Over the years, the planet has been treated to an array of not just prosecutions, but prosecutions arising from threats of, should we say, high-profile individuals. There are many countries in the world that have had their leaders actually assassinated, and the assassinations began with a threat. Now, because of the reality of threats and the possibility that they might be realized, the world over, once again, the seriousness is actually manifested by strong security being brought to bear or being brought around individuals who are considered high profile. None other than the presidents of every independent or not so independent nation. There is always security. Whether they are visible or not, there's always security. In this country, in the last few months, we've been treated to many complaints by high-ranking officials. It began with the deputy president of this country claiming that there were people who were out to kill him. That went on. There was a back and forth. The highest organs of police investigation were involved. The jury is still out on that one. People were arrested. Now, the latest one came from the governor of Machakos. Now, he was specific. He mentioned the threats from the deputy president and the people around him. He mentioned Aden Duale. He mentioned Murkomen. He mentioned people by name. But what is of interest is that blow by blow, detail by detail, he went into the process of explaining and detailing what was said to him verbatim and how it is he felt and why it is he felt that he had been threatened. But this isn't the first time. In this country, we've had many cases. There was a time one Jacoyo Midiwe also claimed that there were people out to get him or people out to harm him, and even claimed that there were people who'd chased him along Bagathi Road and shot at him. Well, it was investigated. Again, not much came out of it. But one dramatic one involved a gentleman by the name of Okondo and a Bishop Munge. Apparently, Okondo was known to speak and speak very often, perhaps one would say uncontrollably. And he did mention something untoward about the bishop. The bishop was a very known critic of the government then. And unfortunately, on his way back to Eldoret, where his diocese was, the bishop met with an accident and died. Okondo was then a minister, had to resign. In the US, the current president has had 23 prosecutions that have arisen from threats against him. Barack Obama had his own. Prosecutions arise from threats. But is it only for the high and mighty? Or should every citizen in this country who feels his life is threatened, should they also be accorded the same protection and the same investigations? Threats should be taken seriously because people who threaten often mean what they say.
King Kaka should have recorded a statement yesterday saying his life is in danger.
Did he?
I don't know.
We don't know that he...
We haven't heard of him recording anything. And who would have threatened his life?
The person who called. We know where you live. If the DCI says we didn't summon you, and yet somebody called him and said, we know where you live, we know what you do, then that's a threat.
It is. But then there is what you call a red herring, isn't it? There are people who will just call for the heck of it. But I would argue, as you say correctly, if he called using a phone, then it shouldn't be difficult to trace that phone call, isn't it?
Right.
Yes.
And I think, of course, it was said that after he tried to call, the said number was off. But I mean, if it was something...
Even if it's off.
Of course, there are ways to trace, and it would be something that you would want to report, especially looking at the delicacy of all that is happening with this particular case. But then looking at looking at other threats that have been made to people, yes, then if you feel, just like you said, by the time somebody says, and says it in no uncertain terms, that I'm going to come after you in one way or another, we're not talking about playground politics here. We're talking about real life stuff. And somebody says to you that I am going to actually
Cause you bodily harm.
Yeah, the first thing that you should do is believe it, that they actually might. But then, are we all awarded the same kind of protection as citizens, as those with political power, as those with some kind of political might that then would be able to get all that they needed to have that kind of protection awarded to them? And I think, yes, it's something that we should all be privy to.
Is there any evidence that he was actually summoned, as far as he's concerned, that there was a phone call, or is he telling fibs? Because he's enjoying the attention, no doubt, and this is an artist, and this is somebody who does want an audience. So is there any evidence whatsoever that there was that phone call?
He showed journalists the phone number and the phone and the call records. There was actually a call, an incoming call.
And what does Truecaller say? I mean, you've got Truecaller at the very least.
So somebody was called. That's what the police should be investigating this. If we didn't summon you,
so
then
he
go and report a
showed
statement.
journalists a number that called him, of which I have 10 of those a day, at least.
Yep.
People calling in.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that the conversation then went as he purports.
That's why the police
But
should
it also
investigate.
doesn't mean that it wasn't, does it?
There's a phone call. There's call record showing there's a call that came in.
From where?
From a call. From
Well,
a
he's
certain
going to have
number.
had 10 phone calls. Eric, how many incoming phone calls do you
Yes,
get
but
in a
if
day?
you were to show them, he would show them the call that contained whatever threat it is.
What he believes
That's what
to
he
be
would do.
This number called
If
me.
indeed there was a call with any threat, I'm just introducing that possibility. that he
Yes,
could be
and
lying.
that's the job of the police to investigate if indeed there was a threat. Just like the police should investigate when Senator Wetangula says somebody followed me up Mbagathiwe and shot at me.
Remember, the DCI have actually categorically stated that they did not summon him. So, that they're clear about. But as for investigations, I'm sure they're investigating. But do they investigate because a complaint has been made, or do they investigate if you actually record a complaint?
That's how a complaint is made. You record it. Not just by stating, right? And that's why I started by saying King Kaka should actually record a statement saying my life is in danger because somebody called me and threatened me and told me if I don't go to Kiambu Road Mazingira House by a certain time, they know where I live.
So
and if
this
I've come here and you've said you're not the ones, then please.
The reason he's probably not recording that statement is because he doesn't want an investigation into it, because he knows he's lying.
I think he attempted to actually record a statement. I saw a report.
What does
like
an
that
attempt
later.
at recording a statement
went,
look like?
Went to Muthaiga and then he was told go to Kilimani. I'm not sure whether he went to Kilimani.
Speaking of
He just
Kilimani,
thought, forget it.
Speaking of Kilimani, this
Maybe
is
he
where we
did
saw
go.
the governor for Machakos
Alfred
actually go
Mutua.
and record a statement, and he gave details as to what exactly happened and who said what to him. Now, this is what we are looking at, that in this case, a threat has been made to you on several occasions by different individuals saying certain things that then would mean that your life was in danger or you felt threatened at some point. Now, whether you are a common citizen, you're not in a position of power, you still then, just like you said, you must then go record a statement so that there is evidence to the fact that you have put something down. So in the event that something should happen to you, it had been recorded that you felt this kind of threat. Now, the details with which the governor of Machakos gave in his statement and said this and this is what happened on this and this and the other occasion. I mean, I don't think he's doing this just for any kind of political mileage, because he gave details and you could tell that actually, yes.
Actually, we don't know.
He gave details, though.
Listen,
We do know that he gave details.
you
gave a phone number.
You guys,
No. The governor of
governor of
Machakos.
Machakos.
Oh, the
gave
governor, right.
details.
Sorry, I was on Kaka King.
Oh,
you
right, he
guys,
gave details
you
as
guys
to what
yesterday were
happened.
saying that you would remember details to such extent. Weeks later, and then you'd remember a conversation verbatim, word for word, and how the person was looking at you. And this is weeks
Years
later.
later, not even weeks later, years later. Something
for
as
word.
If you
important.
feel threatened,
Verbatim.
you're going to remember what somebody said to
Not
you.
just one sentence, but a conversation.
You're going
like
to
a lengthy
remember
back and
what-
forth.
Yeah.
And he says he even remembers the look that the DP gave him, the piercing
and I told him this.
look.
And in fact, this is what I said. But Nyeri, please do not talk to me. Like, no, wait a minute. I'm going to talk to you. You remember exactly, even at what point he interjected in a conversation.
Yes.
Yes.
It's actually called a flashbulb moment, what you've just described. And it's often associated, for instance, if, say, an important person, say a head of state, passes away, the effect on the people, it's often measured by, this is what is recorded as, people remember details of what they were doing on that day, to the detail of what they ate, when this happened, when this particular news.
Where they were.
Yes, exactly. Now, the same shock effect could be the same effect that the governor of Machakos felt, Dr. Mutua felt. So he would be able to remember in detail. Every senses, all the senses in his body were now alive and alert. It is not an unusual phenomenon. Yes.
They have sort of ridiculed him, those close or allied to the DP. If you saw some of the memes that were going around on the internet, it's not a threat that people are taking too seriously. Of course, he's associated with Cobra Squad, which I think was a TV show supposed to be high action and high impact and so on. And I think Murkomen, of course, who's a mouthpiece for DP, went on to say that he thinks he's in Cobra Squad and he's playing this out. And he also referred to Joseph Goebbels, the propagandist back in Hitler's time, and tried to draw parallels between him and Alfred Mutua. So very interesting. Of course, Alfred Mutua was a spokesperson for government under the Kibaki regime. So very interesting. Not too many people taking him seriously from the Tanga side, at least. So they've ridiculed him.
I think they do. When you spend that amount of time trying to ridicule someone or trying to threaten them, two things come to mind. One, that particular side of individuals are in a spot of bother. Something isn't right with them. They are panicky, they are fidgety, they are oversensitive. And why do you go around, even if it's in jest, and it clearly wasn't in jest, going around? Why do you employ threats as a mode of jest when you're talking to a citizen of this country who is of a high profile? That's one. Two, because they keep talking about this same individual and they keep talking about this particular issue, it's not a non-issue to them. It is.
Right.
But what comes to mind, something is happening within that camp and they're ill at ease. They are not a happy bunch. They are, in fact, at best, I would say they are panicky. These aren't people who are sitting comfortably somewhere. They're not. When the first thing you meet a person and all you do is issue things that amount to threats. Those aren't signs of people who are sitting pretty. People who are sitting pretty tend to be at ease, relaxed, jovial. After all, this isn't someone they don't know. This is someone they do know. Yes. And I don't think that the governor of Machakos is a mad person. I don't think he's mentally unstable to imagine that he was being threatened if he didn't feel he was being threatened. No. He actually felt he was being threatened, and that's why he took it to the point of actually reporting the matter to the police.
If you remember, the DP himself said he had been threatened at some point. Or was it Itumbi who wrote that he had been threatened?
That's a story for a few minutes from now.
27 minutes to 7
Did
o'clock.
he record a statement?
Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads, and then we come back with the conversation.
Spice and everything nice. All right.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
Take a look at what's happening in Thika Road in Safi Sana, all the way from Thika Road, and actually being able to get to Riverside in 10 minutes. It's fantastic. Now is the time to use the superhighway if you're really serious about getting out before the traffic starts. Not so bad. It's giving us good vibes today. Mombasa Road as well, not so bad right now. We're likely to see some traffic build up around about Syokimau in just a very short period of time. So again, now is the time to get out. The eastern and southern bypasses right now are smooth. Wayaki Way will actually build up in a short while. So again, if you've not left now, you might have a bit of a problem about a half an hour. We'll let you know what it looks like as the sun comes up and people are on the roads. But for now, it's looking good everywhere you go.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Everything nice. Spice FM.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
As I was saying, excuse me, you can always tell when someone actually genuinely feels that their life is in danger. Now, the fact that someone who was a spokesman for the government in a previous administration means nothing more than that he was a spokesman. It's someone with a function. It's a job. They're supposed to say things on behalf of the government. We've had other spokesmen since. It's a government position. It's a government job. But when someone goes to the extent of even trying to actually compare this particular individual with someone who was the minister for propaganda in a government
previous administration, right?
of a government that was known for the atrocities committed against people. Now that's stretching it. That's really stretching it, because what that gentleman was known for, there's nothing pleasant that person was known for, apart from serving the person who gave him the job. That was the only pleasant thing. I'm talking about Goebbels.
Right.
What is his name? Goebbels?
Goebbels.
Goebbels, not Goebbels.
Yeah. Goebbels. Joseph Goebbels.
The Joseph is easy to get. It's the Goebbels bit. which is a bit-
You're gobbling with it.
Yes.
It would be interesting to know how many, I'm sure that over time, just like when you started off CT, over time there have been very many threats I think we see from people in prominent positions, whether they be business people, whether they be, government, prominent individuals. Now, it would be interesting to see how many times the threat was made good. And when I say this is, how I say this is that, did they actually result in something, or after it was made public that there's a threat against my life, and then people at least were on edge to say, okay, fine, we know that this has been said or done, we're going to beef up security and make sure that you're well taken care of. However, have there been times when people have disappeared?
When someone said my life is in
when
danger,
somebody said my life is in danger, and then they
something happened
actually
to their life.
Yes,
If you will recall, in very recent memory, something has been happening in Latin America. Chile, to be precise, they have been revisiting the time when the gentleman called Pinochet had been president. There were atrocities that were committed then, and the issues surrounding them are now being brought to light now. Pinochet died, by the way,
Yes.
quite a while back. It's not that he's alive. But the point was, whenever you've had authoritarian government, the thing that you state, it happens most then. Because no one can actually question what happens to you. You're not taken to court, you just disappear. The other time when people disappear are in places that are reported to have drug cartels. You'll find people disappear, and then with time, again, the news informs us, you find mass graves. And when you identify the individuals, some of them are individuals whom the family had reported to have disappeared. But the thing, there are countries who don't report, they don't tabulate, they don't tell you about these threats. They don't inform you. Like the former Eastern Bloc, they would not tell you if there had been threats against the leadership. But the group of people whose lives were constantly under threat were people in the media. Constantly. And many even lost their lives. But that hasn't changed. Even in modern day life in the 21st century, the one group of people whose lives seem to be constantly under threat are journalists, people in the media. They are the ones who probably face the most threats.
that's true.
Yes.
But in Kenya, when a prominent person actually has gone to say my life is in
Is in
danger,
danger,
and
I
has
need
made a
extra
public
security,
statement,
yes.
has anything happened to them?
Meaning, have they died?
Yes, have they
or
disappeared?
been injured, or been attacked,
or
like
disappeared.
directly.
I think Jacob Juma had actually reported
Had he?
his life
Right.
was under threat at some point.
Had he?
Yes,
Actually, if I
there's-
recall correctly, he did.
Yes, and
He did. He did.
But-
And he spoke about it not once. He spoke about it often.
Constantly talked about his life.
He
being-
did, yes. He did speak about it.
so reporting doesn't necessarily protect your life.
And then those ones that have reported, have we seen investigations actually going to a conclusion and saying, all right, so you came and reported that so-and-so was endangering your life, and we found that indeed they were planning something.
Well, it's
Or
very
If there's a
difficult.
conclusion, the media didn't report it. At least if it did, I would have read it. And if I missed it, somebody would have told me about it.
Without an actual murder, it's very difficult to find evidence of actual planning. People don't leave sort of notepads lying around of what they've written in terms of how they were planning to commit the murder. So it would be conversations between two people, which are very difficult to capture and present as evidence.
Unless people saw you in a hotel next to the National Security Agency.
Like,
You see, there's,
like in the
again,
case of some certain letter that's a subject
yes,
of
but,
course.
written.
but
Yes.
around these things, there are always mysteries because there are prominent people who pass away, and it is presumed there was some ill motive or there were some nefarious individuals behind it. But it's just that it's a presumption.
And even the inquests don't come out conclusive.
No, they don't.
Saitote inquest, we don't know. The Mutula Kilonzo inquest
No, we
still hasn't come
We
out.
don't. And when you shroud these things in mystery, we know the person died. That's what we really know.
yes, it is. That we do know.
That we do know.
That's clear.
Yes. there's clarity there. But as for the other details,
The cause,
yes,
circumstances,
and all that, what often happens is there are a lot of rumors around it. There are people who come up with all sorts of stories really around it.
Right. So the bothersome thing then is that then do we believe it when it comes out? Because unfortunately, we had this supposed threat of assassination of the deputy president a few months ago. And then it turned out that it was a fake letter and I don't know who wrote it. And then the individual who was said to have written it was then arrested and he was then investigated. So then when somebody else comes and it maybe is not crying wolf in this case and is actually being, forthright and honest about the threat that they feel, do we then take that seriously? Kind of like in a situation...
How do we know they're not crying wolf?
This is the thing. This is what I am saying. At the same time, do we take everything seriously and investigate by virtue of the fact that somebody says, look, my life is in danger? And given the details that Governor Mutua gave, again, we said this is unlikely to be something that he made up, giving the details that he gave in this statement and looking at the things that he actually said, especially for somebody to repeat that sentiment and to speak in the plural, not me, but we. And then in the second incident, when they actually came back and said, look, we told you. Previously, in a previous conversation we had, you see, we told you, tulikwambia. So this is obviously something that he remembered, and this is something that he brought forward. So now, when you have a previous case of a highly prominent individual saying something in terms of threat to his life, and it turned out to be a circus, then somebody comes a few months later and says, yes, my life has been
fresh
threatened.
round of circus.
So is it a fresh round of circus, or should we take it seriously? And in the event that something, God forbid, happens,
No, all
then
threats,
what?
all reported threats should be taken seriously.
Should be taken seriously.
Yes, they should.
And I
Even
think-
by Itumbi, it should be taken seriously.
Yes,
even
yes.
by Nyeri Thorn, they should all be taken seriously and investigated.
Why would you say that?
In case
Anybody.
it's anybody.
Yes, but
Any
you know
citizen.
Itumbi, the reason I brought in Itumbi, it's anecdotal in that there's a lot of political games he plays. Now, if he
He's
said
in
that
political
the DPs...
communication,
the
you're in
DPs
political communication.
No, don't bring me into this. I've never made such a
Yet.
report. I haven't, and I'm
Yet.
not going to, and I'm
Yet.
not going to.
You don't
get
know,
personal,
Jerry. You
Eric.
don't know what happens.
No, I know exactly how these things work, and I have nothing to do with them. What Itumbi was doing was, of course, a political game with the DP. Now, that's what I'm asking. Should those be taken
Yes,
seriously?
they should.
Let's act on what is already there. Don't
Yes,
start proposing
yes,
that
they should.
I might make a claim like
If
this.
Dennis Itumbi does make a claim, which he hasn't, it should be
It should
investigated.
be taken as
And he hasn't.
seriously as
And it should
any
be clear,
other.
he hasn't.
Dennis
If-
Itumbi was involved in the claims that the DP's life.
You know, the truth is, I don't know. For
The case is in
instance.
court.
Yes.
What
Nobody
is
knows.
Dennis being accused of?
What I know is that there were issues surrounding the DP and there were claims by him or reported to be by him that his life was in danger. Yes, that I know because it was reported. Anything that happened beyond that, I actually don't know. And I do know that there were investigations. And I do know that there is a case in court and I've heard nothing else. Unless somebody has heard something else, is there? I don't
Case is ongoing.
There is no life that is more important than another.
And the other.
That is how the theory goes. But the practice is that there are lives which are considered to be more important than others.
Well, I mean, we've
That's
seen that.
why
we've seen that
when
play
certain
out.
people complain, these matters are taken more seriously and people are galvanized into taking action.
Of course.
Yes.
For example, if there's any attempt at the president's life, that should be taken seriously, with utmost seriousness, because it's the office as well, right? If anybody is
And
caught
the deputy
strike-
president?
presidency, even the cabinet, even senior members of government, it's office as well. And my point was, I think all threats should be taken seriously. All of them should be investigated. And in a case where it's found that somebody was actually making a frivolous claim, action should be taken on them as well. If, for example, you come and say, my life is in danger and I need extra security, you're asking the state to actually allocate resources to you. And then we find out that there was absolutely nothing. What you've said was made up. All evidence from investigators are showing that there was nothing at all that was putting your life in danger.
Which is why I say now
You're
it
making
poses
a public
a
statement.
danger then to anybody who would come in the future. And unfortunately, that's what it does. It creates doubt around the psyche of people, even investigative authorities later. Because should somebody come up with something later that is actually authentic, you're going to look through it, you're going to look through that lens that this is probably just hogwash, or this is somebody trying to bring
you
up
think
issues of
maybe
Cobra
that's what-
Squad, So
maybe that's
if
what-
it is authentic, then that's
Maybe
the
that's
problem.
what the DP was doing. He's priming the land.
So that if
for-
anybody else
if
comes
anybody makes a complaint, it's looked at as ridiculous.
That is definitely a possibility.
Yeah.
It's definitely a possibility, but it cannot, even despite that, be taken less seriously. Because people have been known to die, people have been known to be killed. Now, the one country that reports all these details ends with the US, and they'll give you details. For instance, we know that they are one country who have had 4 sitting presidents assassinated. 4. Many countries, I think, have to make it with 1. Okay, and that is after a long period of time. Okay, but they have had 4. Now, Barack Obama was also threatened
Yes, he was.
many times, and in the US, they even profile. They even tell you that these threats are likely to come from white supremacists. Okay, now, what we call misinformation, then they usually an attempt to bring in what they call jihadists. Okay, but in America, the white supremacists take the lead on this. They are the ones who are known, and why they're taken seriously is because they don't just threaten; they've been known to actually put into practice these threats.
There's some sort of attempt.
There'll
be a letter
yes,
bomb.
they do.
There'll
They
be
do.
There'll be something that will be intercepted at some point. It's 14 minutes to 7 o'clock. This is the situation. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We're going to open up the phone lines now. 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. CT Muga is saying all reported cases of life in danger or threats to someone's life should be taken seriously from all quarters and should also be investigated as seriously. Do you agree? 0719-012-600.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
There are incidences where, I mean, even you hear someone saying that their life is in danger and you're thinking, wait a minute, is this another one? Is it one of those again? And of course, with time, the society starts getting to take it like, it's one of those. You just, making a statement. It's just part of your politics. Part of the politicking.
Even
process.
as I read it, or even as I heard about it the first time, I thought, okay, y'all, here we go. Here is another person, or here is somebody else who is trying to say that, a threat has been made about him or her because of sentiments that or things that they had expressed, most recently. And we see a most recent expression by the governor that, yes, he intends to run for president in the next elections, and also then where his leanings are in terms of who he's going to go to for support, or who he's going to put his support behind. Now, after I read the details of the statement and looked at what exactly was said, then my thinking changed a little bit. But initially, it was that. And
You're
unfortunately,
one of those.
Unfortunately, yes, that was the thinking. And you would find that is what a lot of people would have thought. That, okay, yeah, well, this is somebody else making a statement. And it's not really founded.
But you see,
unfortunately, that's the first thing that you think, especially because of what has happened in the past, whereby it was actually seemed or deemed to not be true.
If indeed Mutua's life was threatened by the DP, what do you reckon the motive would be?
Well, again, I mean...
But he stated clearly what
he
the
said
angst was
they
about.
told him. They said it basically said, kwa nini unatugonga saa zote?
But there's a lot of people who criticize the
hitting
DP.
out at us.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who criticize the DP. Is he going to kill all of them?
But they didn't threaten to kill him.
They just basically threatened to deal with him, basically, is what they said.
And
now,
so
dealing
chop
with
off
him...
a few fingers, or...
Who knows what
I would have
dealing
thought
with
if he then goes and reports that his life is under threat, then he felt they threatened to kill him.
He felt his life was in danger.
Yes, in danger.
That's for sure. But in this country, when you've had people who are in high office or who are high profile passing away or dying through assassinations, one doesn't read of threats. We normally read of them having died.
Afterwards.
Yes,
then you hear after
or
the
attempts.
fact that they had made or they had
or
expressed
an
fear.
actual attempt had been made.
Yes.
Yes, but it's not often that you read of a story that so-and-so had reported that his life had been under threat. No. It's one so-and-so is probably an opponent of the government policies. Then the next thing, so-and-so has died.
Right.
Well, usually if you are going to be assassinated, whoever it is by, they're not going to threaten you.
I would assume they
You
wouldn't.
might feel your life is under threat because perhaps you know you've done something to somebody. Perhaps the DP was just saying this in jest, like Utaniona sort of thing, like joking. Who knows?
And his whole demeanor is characterized by humor, is it?
But
Does
all
he
of them
strike you
have-
as a kind of a humorous guy?
Yes, politicians are humorous people. You know, when politicians are actually talking their usual politics and their political rhetoric, there's one thing that, you know, the way they tell, we shall tutapambana. What's that guy who was saying? Tutakushughulikia. And someone comes and tells, come on, I didn't mean it that way. I didn't. The thing is, it's important that you take it seriously because you don't know what exactly they mean by tutakushughulikia or tutapambana or just leave this one to me, I'll deal with him. You don't know exactly what it means.
Is
Yes.
Alfred Mutua afraid, do you think?
He said so himself.
He said he was.
He said he was. He said he was
He
afraid.
said he is afraid, yes.
He actually said so.
I don't think that's a good picture to paint. And as far as, I mean, there's a lot of things that can be discussed here. Of course, his life comes first and it's of utmost importance. But as far as a political figure, you don't want to paint yourself as a big girl's blouse in that, you know, you're scared and sort of petrified, a bit of a wuss, so to speak. And I think that's what the Murkomens have then ridden on. If you've seen the memes that are going around, making him out and painting him out to be a bit of a sissy.
Right.
So
And
whether
that's the unfortunate thing, though, because this is the thing. If there actually is any kind of danger, it has already been perceived that it is a joke. And so if the man is truly afraid, you know, you already have that there's a joke out there. We don't know. Nobody was there in that moment when things were being said or not said. Nobody knows actually how he felt. Did the hair on the neck of his hair, on the back of his neck stand? Did he really feel that he was threatened? Nobody knows that. But then for him to go and say it publicly, then I think some amount of seriousness then it needs
Ought
to be
given.
accorded. Absolutely.
By now, 2 days later, we should be hearing summonses for the persons adversely mentioned.
but
Like, come on, record a statement. Let's hear what you actually said. Do you recall this conversation? Were you part of this conversation? What did you say? What was your side of the story? Because going 3 days without any sort of response from the police also tells you something. That maybe they're just taking it as one of those that they would just want to sweep under the carpet.
But the blitz of ridicule that has come in retort is also quite telling. In politics, one way to sort of marginalize dissent is to ridicule it and name it conspiracy theories and so on. So that could also be very telling, the way in which they've reacted. As CT said, they've given it a lot of airtime and column inches in responding to it. If really it was a non-issue,
Let's
I
pick this
doubt they
call.
would say anything.
This is Sami in Magarini, Malindi. Good morning, Sami.
Yes, good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Sammy.
Yes, please, I'd like to contribute to the show.
Yes.
Yes, please continue.
Yes, I think we have not so forgotten about these politicians. Last time we had Mwau, who actually claimed that his car was shot, but when the police investigated, they found that the shooting was very close, that it was actually stage managed.
Yep.
And also Wetangula, you remember you hit the pole,
Yep.
and they claimed that there was something sinister about that. So I think, in the first place, why did Mutua have to go to a public to make it public that he was going to record a statement when he should have even gone to Machakos, any police station in Machakos? This, I think, he was just taking drawing attention from the people that his life is in danger and all that, and he's also vying for presidency camp 2022 and all that. But in real sense, we know that if a politician is actually under threat, he cannot actually go in public. He can go and record a statement himself with the responsible authority, and they should do investigation. But this is a wolf cry that is being this and that. But we know there is nothing like maybe being present and you go and report publicly, because you have to go and do it privately. It is your own business with the responsible authority. But this is just drawing attention from the public so that he wins sympathy vote or whatever is.
Sami, should it be taken seriously? Should it be investigated?
Yes, the responsible authority should investigate, but it should not be in public that everyone knows that his life is in danger.
Okay.
How do we help that anyway?
Thank you, Sami. Good point. Victor in Kericho. Good morning, Victor.
Yes, morning, Eric.
Hello. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Morning, Siri.
Good morning, Victor.
Yes, Ndu and Jerry, good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, I would like to say this.
Mm-hmm.
No citizen in this country should be intimidated by anybody. That's one. And whenever somebody raises an alarm of that magnitude, like the one Governor for Machakos raised, it should not be taken lightly.
It shouldn't.
Yes, it should not be taken lightly because most of guys are in denial and they don't want to come out the way the governor came out. Some people are being maybe intimidated by fellow workmates, village mates, and it should not be that way.
True, indeed. Thank you, Victor.
Hello? Yes. Hello?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yes.
Victor.
Yes, Eric.
Yes, Victor.
Like for instance, at times I get from the conversation, at times Nyeri on trying to maybe intimidate you. You should not take it lightly.
So Eric should go and write a statement.
Anyway, on a light note, guys.
Thank you, Victor. Have a good day. From this point on, I'm recording a statement.
Well, I think it can't be taken lightly against it. I mean, it's very important, I think, to look behind all of this and what exactly happened, because it was not too long ago that around the Kibra election, we saw that Alfred Mutua was one of the ones who came and gave his support, especially to opposition leader Raila Odinga and the ODM party kind of thing. And so then again, after that, making known very clear that he wanted to run for that he wants to run for president in 2022. Those sentiments obviously would come as something that would be somebody who you thought you'd be able to get some kind of support from is then now running against you. And then now all of those things taken into consideration, then it would be very clear why such threats would have been made to him, now making him feel afraid. So then, of course, then people will be asking, then why of all people would he threaten him? And I think it would be quite significant in terms of the support that he was lending, now being the governor, Alfred Mutua. And that cannot be ignored as well. They didn't just pick somebody out of the blue to point a finger at and say, tutakushughulikia, basically. Obviously there was a reason why.
But bear in mind, right across the border in Uganda, opposition leaders have, many of them, let me talk about two. They have recorded statements in the past about their lives being threatened. What we've seen is they've been jailed, but they're actually alive and well and kicking. Now, if we move from Uganda and say go to Europe, there's something that is rife even as we speak, and it's gaining momentum. The opposition to refugees. In Germany, it took center stage when the regional leader was actually killed. But prior to that, he had been threatened, and others had even been knifed. So mayors within cities in Germany who supported the chancellor's position on refugees have been threatened by right-wing extremists. Now, these threats are taken seriously because one person has died. It isn't the first time somebody has died. Others have been injured. Now, in this country, we've had cases of assassinations, yes. We've had. But they were not preceded by threats. Not really. Or at least one didn't record a threat. What we knew was that somebody was shot dead.
Well, if he did record a threat, he didn't go public. I
About
think somebody
it, yeah.
here was saying that we had a caller call in and say he should have just recorded a threat at the police station, Machakos police station, and that there was no need to go public. Whereas I think going public would actually act as a deterrent if indeed there was a threat and it was kept private in terms of the reporting of it. Then that reporting of it serves no purpose in terms of defending him. I think by going public, it does put pressure under the DP not to kill him if indeed he was planning
threatened
to
in
kill him.
Nairobi. So it makes sense that he should
Make a
make
statement
the
in Nairobi.
Nairobi.
Yes.
Oh, even if in Nairobi, but the fact that he's gone public, i.e., he's got the media involved, and
It's a deterrent.
his,
It
I
tells
think
everybody,
it
should
acts
anything
as a
happen to
deterrent.
me, look at so and so. Phone lines are open 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. You can also post your comment on Facebook. That's Spice FM KE, and Twitter. Our Twitter handle is at Spice FM KE. Good morning. It's now 7 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation.
Sugar and spice.
spice up your life. Traffic.
Mombasa Road is clear all the way to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. It's not giving much pressure trying to get into the city centre today. Thika Road as well, no jam. 23 minutes all the way to the city centre, coming all the way from Zimmerman. Ngong Road also, both sides. People are asking, is it already Christmas? Because this is the gift that keeps on giving this morning, where there is no traffic. From town to Nyayo Uhuru Highway, no glitches whatsoever. And that's coming out of Westlands. All the way from Demi Lane to the CBD as well. Look anywhere you want. There's absolutely no traffic on the roads today. Let's see how long that will last. Things might change. We don't know yet. You see anything, do let us know. 0719-012-600. But for now, this is the time to actually be on the road.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Njeri Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
2 minutes after 7 o'clock. Good morning, and how are you doing? This is The Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Wherever you go around the country over this festive season, you'll find us in Malindi on 97.7, in Nakuru 96.0, Eldoret 96.7, Nyeri 90.9, Kisumu 102.5, Mombasa 87.9. If you remain with us here in Nairobi, you'll be listening to us on 94.4. Of course, we live stream around the world on www.spicefm.co.ke and Facebook, SpiceFMKE, and our Twitter account is at SpiceFMKE. We also live stream on YouTube. SpiceFMKE is our channel. We're discussing threats to life. And when somebody actually goes to report a threat to their life to the police, what should the police do about that, City?
Usually, if you look at just say the anatomy of threats and when they occur, in countries it's when there was probably an important issue that involves the whole nation,
yes,
and one that becomes emotive. Like in this country, during elections, we hear of people being abducted, we threats, they arrive at that particular moment in time. In Britain, over this matter of Brexit, MPs have been threatened, many MPs, especially MPs who were against that particular process. And what is interesting is I'm drawing a parallel here. When some of the MPs complained, and many of them were Labour, none other than the Prime Minister himself referred to their complaints as humbug. Essentially saying, nini, kwani, what? Exactly, all right? Now, we see the same response to Alfred Mutua's complaints. It's like, come on.
I mean, after all, this is the guy who did Cobra Squad. Those are the things he's still latent.
And a lot of these comments were before the actual election. So it is actually common for those who perhaps are in power and who feel that their position of power may be threatened. They will want to, Kenyan term, rubbish. They will want to treat as nonsense whatever else these people are raising, which will be of concern. Because by the time people change the way they live, the way they go about their business, the way they conduct even their constituents because of threats, then these threats cannot be taken to be false. They must be real.
Indeed.
Yes.
When a boy cries wolf, run and find out where the wolf is. And if you indeed establish that the boy was merely crying wolf, punish the boy as well. So when somebody goes and makes a claim, I was driving up Magathi Road and, somebody shot at me and a billboard fell onto my car, and then you establish really what was happening.
Or a roundabout moved.
Or a roundabout moved.
Yes.
What actually
It
happened
wasn't where I
is
left
you
it when
are
I
the one
went in the
who
opposite
veered off
direction.
the road. Let's establish the circumstances, and there was nobody, as you claim, to have threatened you. That action should be taken against that person.
It should.
When somebody says that I was driving along City Hall Way and people shot at me, and then investigations revealed that the person who actually shot into this vehicle was shooting into vehicle from close range, and there was nobody in the vehicle at that moment, action should be taken publicly as the claim has been made.
The MP who died in the UK in 2016 was a lady. She was a Labour MP. She was a lady called Jo Cox. And she was actually killed by somebody who held far-right wing views, and it was a gardener who came and stabbed her during the elections because, of course, the tensions were so high. The temperature had hit fever pitch in terms of, for or against and sort of fascism and so on. So it wasn't one where there'd been a threat, but the situation and the politics created a threat to people who held certain ideologies. So even with our politics, we see it in the run-up to elections, whereby if you say certain things in certain areas, you can be killed. So the threat runs beyond the individual threat when it comes to politics. It's not just one person threatening to kill another. You can create such a hostile environment, such a politically intolerant situation whereby somebody cannot go into territory that might hold opposing views and actually make statements, which of course undermines democracy. Everybody should be able to go and try and persuade people into their way of thinking, should be able to go and rally in any geographical region within Kenya. So threats themselves, they do they do have wider implications than actually just killing somebody, because you can imagine now it's going to be very difficult for Mutua to go into parts of the Rift Valley and try and convince people of his manifesto and his policies for 2022. He's created a sworn enemy in coming out and talking about this threat. So perhaps the threat itself can serve other political purposes, and maybe this is something that the DP knew, and he had no intention of killing Mutua. Who knows?
If indeed the allegations are true.
That the threat was made. I believe that, and I'm going to work off the premise that something was said that left Mutua feeling somewhat intimidated and his life under threat. As to whether the DP was being serious or it was being said as a political warning, or indeed in jest, of which...
or misunderstood or misconstrued.
Well, there's very little to misconstrue. It's not particularly ambiguous if somebody says, I'm going to finish you. What are you going to finish? My beard, my hair? You're going to finish me in terms of you're going to kill me.
End my life.
End my life.
No, or just finish your political career.
It's possible, but why is it that other people have not reported the same? If indeed it is something people say generally,
if they're used to that kind of
when
talk,
because others have not taken it
and
seriously,
as a greeting
perhaps.
you say nitakumaliza. That is a greeting.
Yes,
Nitakugonga. Tutapambana.
Tutapambana leo.
It says, this is said.
Maybe they'd be too scared to report it.
Yeah, this is politicians. When you listen to politicians, even when they're standing up on the podium, they speak this way. Tutapambana, tutapelekana, tutamenyana. It will be noisy. It will be. They say this all the time.
Right, but then again, you see, the thing is, you can't ignore, and I think we all read that statement. You can't ignore, the details that this gentleman gave in terms of, what he remembers, and he talked about the gestures and what it felt like to be in that space, and whether there was eye contact or not, that kind of thing. So for somebody to go into such detail, I think it was a little bit more than over-the-top jest. I think it was clear that, he did actually feel that, something was amiss.
That's why I called it it's called a flashbulb moment.
Right.
And also, we have to remember who it was that was giving this threat and the reputation that
of the individuals
might precede him. If this was Kibaki who gave the threat, you could laugh it off. Given it was coming from quarters that people are a little bit afraid of, to be honest.
Why? Because
I'll let you figure that out. No, I'll let you. You can come up with your
National Assembly majority leader has a reputation and a history for.
I'll let you figure it out. Our callers can call in and tell us.
Well,
but his reputation does precede him, and there is a fear, which I think is a healthy fear of the man. So
when your speech patterns are characterized by strong statements, usually which border on threats, unfortunately, the things you say will not be considered humorous.
No.
Yes.
Especially since you also have supporters who, and out of those quarters, previous things have been said. Even the thing that we joke about today, where did it come from? Same quarters. It was whether it was said in jest or not, it's something then that has become resonant.
If you look
with
at the
this group of
circumstances surrounding those statements, those were not cheerful, happy circumstances. It's not as though people were sitting together enjoying ice cream, and then in the midst of slurping up the ice cream,
they click their spoons and
then they say "Nitakushughulikia." No. It isn't one of those situations at all. Look, so as not to read too much into this, the truth of the matter is there was a complaint. It was lodged with the police, but of significance is how often have we heard of people being arrested for actually bringing about threats? How often have we even heard of people being persecuted?
It's a
for
difficult
bringing
one
about
to
this?
prove, though,
Yes.
isn't it? In terms of the onus being on the prosecution, it's very difficult to bring about evidence for something you're planning to do, conspiring to do, if you haven't done it already. Usually with being arrested for, conspiracy to murder, usually what would have happened is the murder has happened, there's the murderer, and he actually implicates other people that might have been involved in the planning. It is very difficult to find people planning something, because you can't get into somebody's thoughts, even as the prosecution, and see what somebody's plans were. I've got Charlie, being Charlie, here on Twitter. Of course, he's an ardent listener. He says, Dr. King, Martin Luther King, I assume, precisely at the moment of his assassination, was reconceptualizing the civil rights movement and moving towards a sort of coalition relationship with the trade union movement. Is Dr. Alfred Mutua putting together a coalition that could be a threat to DP Ruto or to DP Ruto's 2022 goals? Interesting.
Since it's brought in Martin Luther King, let me bring in Malcolm X. It is alleged that the people behind his assassination were people who actually belong to the Muslim Brotherhood that he belonged to. Yes, because they felt he was a threat to Elijah Muhammad.
Right, and he was quite powerful.
Yes, it's like he was gaining power that went outside the sphere of influence of Elijah Muhammad.
Right.
Yes. Now, his life had been under threat on many occasions. The American establishment was blamed. There was no shortage of people who were blamed for it. And again, people were arrested. Now, the truth is this. So long as you hold all life as being sacrosanct, then there is nothing like a threat being too small or being inconsequential.
And I think that's the crux of the matter now, because to say then every life, regardless of whether it is somebody in prominence or not, if by the time somebody comes and says, look, this and this and this happened, giving the details, of course, and they say that I do feel that I have been threatened, that should be taken seriously, regardless of who it is.
But remember, in taking this seriously, you do allocate state resources to each case that you take seriously. So you can imagine in a populace or in a population of what, we're 41 million? 47, is it? I should know that. We've just had the census. In a population of 47 million, there'll be couples who fight and threaten each other. I'm going to kill you. There'll be bar fights. People say, I'm going to kill you. How seriously should we take these threats?
They're taken seriously.
I mean, I personally have said I'm going to kill you.
And many people even record statements with the police regarding this, whether it's a domestic tussle or...
CT, have I not said to you I could kill you in conversation?
Well, even if you said it, I wouldn't take it seriously. No, because it came from you, I didn't feel it the least threatened. I presumed you're thinking of killing some insect in your compound, and you named the yes. So,
but back to a serious discussion. How many of these situations should we take seriously as the state, and then actually allocate resources to? Because it then also becomes very difficult, first of all, to prove, but also how do you then protect the person? Do you then, if I went and reported that I felt my life was in danger, what should state security then provide me with bodyguards?
Well, I think at that point, certain questions are asked.
They investigate and people are called in. They do this.
They do.
It's not that they don't. They do.
Right, okay.
Even if it's a
It can't
domestic
just
tussle.
be out of
And
it.
that acts as a
You can't
deterrent.
just walk around and say, I feel like my life is in danger.
No,
You've
there
got to
must
say,
be circumstances surrounding
yes.
this expression. Absolutely. There must have been something that
They'll have
happened.
a talk
Somebody
with you.
said
They'll
something.
ask you.
Yeah,
So you can't just be a paranoid person and you
No.
feel
Well, you can be paranoid if you wish.
but they would find
the
that out as
question
well.
is, yes.
Yeah, they would find out if this was founded on any kind of fact or it was just you pulling things out of the air. And I think they're also, they're able to deduce from what you would say around, the situation.
And that
in terms
acts
of
as a
what happened.
deterrent. The actual investigations act as a deterrent.
Look, maybe I should explain. When you go to the police station to complain, there's usually a desk, a reception of sorts, and they will listen to what you have to say.
Right.
Okay? If they feel that this thing requires further discussion, they'll call a police officer to take you to another room where you can now explain in detail what this thing is about. This is all before you record anything. They
So
will
if they
talk to.
feel it's subjective or...
But this is what they do every day. And we don't know the number of people who come to them, so they will listen to you.
Yep.
And they will say, okay, let's have a discussion about it. And then they'll say, okay, fine. Maybe what you ought to do now is record it in the OB, and that's what you'll do. There's a process to it.
And this happens a lot. It's a daily occurrence across
Yes.
the country. I mean, people just go there. You have a fallout, business fallout, family fallout.
Your
domestic.
chicken is lost. People go
You
with
go
all
and
sorts of
complain
things
and
to
you
the
say,
police.
so and so threatened me because I believe that they stole my chicken. And when I had to ask them, they told me, I'm going to kill you. And you believe that they were serious because the last time you did this and they had chased you with a panga, you actually go and report.
What I'm asking is this reporting and the subsequent investigations, do they act as a deterrent to the killer?
In many cases, you don't hear of anyone having died. Remember, my opening statement was that in this country, we hear of the death having taken place. And it's not often associated with a threat that preceded it. But we do also have cases of threats. And they are reported to the police, and the police do take action. This is the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
They do.
I think they are often, in many cases, they actually serve as a deterrent.
Yes.
Because that person that you've gone to complain about will be called in and they'll be told this person has reported. And because you know that the case has been reported to the police, you feel, okay, I'm already
And you've been
exposed.
pointed out.
You know what
Yeah.
would really serve as a deterrent and it would be completely sustainable is if we had a fair justice system criminal justice system, whereby the judiciary took this seriously, the investigative authorities took this seriously, so that if you did commit a murder, you know there's no getting away with it. That way, you won't try, you won't attempt, and you won't be threatening people's lives.
Therein lies another problem, because even before the slashing of the budget for the judiciary, we had a backlog of cases. Okay? The number of cases we have in our courts, you could argue very few of them receive the justice they deserve because of time. Now, when the resources are then limited, for certain, the delays will be furthered.
You are aware that the money was given back to the judiciary.
Allow me to say this.
Okay.
When you already have a backlog and there's a delay,
Is the delay because of time or because of sort of a lazy judiciary? Because these guys do walk into courts at 10 a.m., 11 a.m. with people having waited.
Jerry, I wouldn't know. But what I do know is that for there to be a backlog, it means the cases are many. You cannot have a
Or
backlog.
the judges are lazy.
I also wouldn't know that.
It's a possibility.
Because over the years, what we've seen is the government trying to fill that gap of inadequate judges or numbers of judges by employing more and more and more people to the bench.
And magistrates and judges coming to vet based on judges' performance and their action while in office. 18 minutes past 7 o'clock. Good morning. This is The Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
How are you doing? We are live streaming the show on Facebook, Spice FM KE, and on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. We are on YouTube. Spice FM KE is our channel. Tag us on Twitter at Spice FM KE, and the hashtag is The Situation Room. In the room, we have Jerry Thorne. My name is Eric Latif. We have Siti Muga and Nduoko.
Right, looking at sentiments that have come up just recently out of Kuala Lumpur, where the president or former president of the United States, Barack Obama, made some statements about the fact that, it is actually time for women to actually sit up and get themselves into positions of leadership. We've had this conversation several times, and we said, look, then room needs to be made for women to actually get into more prominent positions of leadership, governance across the board, social positions for social impact, for social change, because actually seeing a woman in these positions would actually make significant difference. But we've also been then stuck with the issue, then how do we go about it? What do we do to make sure that we change societal attitudes? But this is very clear to me now. that it needs to be that women throw their hats into the ring more. Because when you have a higher percentage of women in contention, then you get people to actually have a greater choice then in what they are going, in terms of how they're going to choose, in terms of how they're going to elect, in terms of how they're going to appoint. When you have a greater ring, where you have a greater resource pool to pick from, and you have more and more women doing this, then you realize that yes, we can actually make a difference when it comes to having women involved. I'm looking at the sentiments that were put out there and what Barack Obama said in Kuala Lumpur when he was looking at the foundation, the Obama Foundation that he has come up with his wife. And he said, women, I want you to know that you are not perfect, but what I can say pretty indisputably is that you're better than us men. I am absolutely confident that for 2 years, if every nation on earth was run by women, we would see a significant improvement across the board on just about everything, living standards as well as outcomes. And I am saying this morning that if we had more women in the pool, then it is actually time. The time is right for us to actually elect a woman president in Kenya, a female president in Kenya. The time is right to elect a female president in other countries around the world if and only if we have more women in the pool. And this is to women today, because we've had the backlash over and over. Okay, well, why don't they put themselves out there? Why don't they? And we say, yes, if we want to see a change, if we want to see a change in the way things are done, then we need to see more representation. We need to see more women stepping over that roadblock of what would be innuendo, or what would be a popular belief, or what would be what they call roadblocks. Because you are a woman, and take away from that tokenism that has been often the case, and say we are actually contenders. You want to see real change, and we talk about wanting to see that and push for it, the agitation that we've seen over time. We have to have a greater resource pool. If we're saying 50%, then let's see 50% in terms of representation when you go out there and say, do pick me. And I think we have to do something deliberate about that. And I say yes, because of that, it is time that we see women at the top, at the executive point of leadership. It's time.
It's wishful thinking, to be honest, considering the hostile, the sort of wrathful, vicious environment that women have to face when putting themselves up for leadership, just because of sort of historical perceptions of women. Men, of course, are considered intellectually superior. Women are considered they have a role to play in submission. So just the biases that exist within society, and not just this society. I mean, we're only now seeing, recently we saw Finland is now being run by a coalition of 4 different parties, of which are led by fairly young women, and that's something to celebrate. And even in Switzerland, up until 1971, what is considered a mature democracy today, women couldn't vote. So it's across the globe. Of course, some countries have been more progressive than others in ensuring that this bias is overcome, and there's some element of equity that is introduced in terms of affirmative action. We see that in the creation of a women's rep position. But look at how easy it's been to bastardize that position in terms of what the media has done and the negative publicity. It is very quickly, is very happy to give women. Of course, yesterday, I think CT mentioned that women are held to a much higher standard as well when it comes to ethics and morals. You going out and having a drink would be, would be a conclusion that you're reckless woman who can't look after her home, and therefore you can't look after a seat if it was a parliamentary seat, and therefore you're not fit for leadership. Whereas a man is respected for being out there and downing as many pints as he can, and there's something macho to that. And this is what is considered leadership. So there's a few hurdles, not just the societal attitudes that need to be overcome, but also the women themselves. They're afraid of putting themselves and throwing the hat into the ring because of the environment. As I say, it's very hostile. It's what I would call pugnacious. It's an attack. The minute you jump into that ring, even fellow women will attack you in terms of the standards that they hold you to. Any sort of attributes that men have that are associated or synonymous with leadership, when women have them, they manage to negate these attributes. So if you're assertive as a woman, it's called aggressive. If you're ambitious, it's called bitchiness. If you're, there's a negative connotation to any of these qualities or attributes,
which would be called something totally different when then exhibited by a man, of course. Right.
Yes, by a man. If you're assertive, you're a go-getter, you're decisive, you know yourself. As a woman, when you're assertive, you're aggressive or intimidating. So, and these are the qualities that are needed for leadership. You have to be decisive, you have to be assertive, you have to be ambitious, and so on. So women also don't want to be labeled these sort of negative names, I don't think. And of course, also in a society that puts pressure on you to get married, a man then wants this gentle, sort of subtle, sublime, or quiet, easygoing woman. So you're fighting to maintain that characteristic for a lot of women. So you say it's a battle.
Well, definitely is a battle, but then at the same time, this is what I'm saying. At this point, it is a battle, and it has been a battle for a very long time. But at this point, it's clear that some of those attitudes are not going to change at the snap of a finger. However, and I think that in order to we've seen that things that have been overcome in the past have only been overcome with resilience and persistence. And I think it's time for us to say that it is okay for those labels, because those labels don't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon. So it's okay. Let those labels be there. But at the end of the day, if what we are looking for is actually change in how we see things run, as opposed to the individual who sits in a particular position, then all right, let the labels be there. But then let's throw in terms of representation, more that is in the ring than for people to choose from. Because if we then cower to these labels, if we cower again to this attitude over and over and over and over again, we will not get anywhere.
Barack Obama was making this statement while speaking at a women's meeting in Malaysia. Do you feel that he was just paying lip service to the meeting?
No, I don't, because it's not the first time he's made these sentiments.
Has he acted in any way to show that he actually does support this? And has he gone all out to show, for example, when he was president, the composition of his cabinet, the composition of his top leadership, was it indicative of this is what I strongly feel?
Well, I mean, then again, I don't know how, in terms of how many appointments he made, but you have to also understand that, a lot of these people that he then worked with were elected. So in terms
his cabinet, he appoints his cabinet. He appoints his senior people in office. He even chooses the vice president. Presidential
running mate.
Yes, chooses the running mate. So,
he's going to choose a running mate that will help him win. If there's sort of an aversion to women, then he's not going to choose a woman. He's also politically astute. In terms of appointments, I remember Condoleezza Rice being at the helm of his cabinet.
Absolutely. Right, absolutely.
So, yes, he has shown...
Rice was for George W.
Bush.
Oh, not Obama. Yeah. There was a female who was at the
Hillary Clinton.
Of course, Hillary Clinton, whom he also endorsed for presidency, which I
whom
think
he
shows
ran
the
against
confidence.
And he didn't step down for.
Within the party, yes, because he also wanted to be president, but now he is saying actually there is scope for women, and he supported her, and this shows confidence in women,
and
the confidence he has in women
when she ran. Right. So I mean, I don't. In terms of stepping down for somebody else to run, that was different, because then they were in the same race. You see, so then to say, okay, yes, just because I feel that a woman should be
women
at a position of power, yes.
So basically, he's saying that Hillary was better than him. So he should have basically said at that point, look. But that's just being facetious. What I'm trying to say is, I think in very many of these forums, when we talk about women are important, women need to lead, we pay lip service to these conversations.
Yes, exactly.
And it's the same thing that I feel that Barack Obama was doing, even in this one. Yes, he believes so. We have seen how he supports his wife. He speaks so strongly and so fondly of his daughters. He's a father of girls. Of course, he believes it. But then, in terms of putting your limb out there to make sure that you see an improvement or a difference or a change in terms of elevation of women to positions of leadership, even in your own country. A former president of the United States is not a small person, even in his own country, in his own party of the Democratic Party. I don't see him taking much more action to ensure that what he's talking about, he's actually trying to practice and seeing that it comes to life.
I think these very utterances, considering his gravitas and who he is, these very utterances are very telling of what his position is.
Indeed, gravitas.
On women, yes. Yeah. But I think what the saddest bit about sort of this bias against women in leadership is, as a result, society doesn't get to tap into the abilities of women, and you miss out on a whole section of people as a result of these biases. That's the saddest bit about it. It's not just even for the women to be in leadership. It's a whole country misses out on the ability of a whole grouping of people because of a bias.
But look at what the women compete against in a country, say, like America. They are competing against minorities as well. People feel there should be affirmative action. There's a competition. There are blacks who people feel should be represented. There are Native Americans who people feel should be represented. And then the other minorities coming up again. And then you bring in the issue of women. So it isn't as though it's just against the male dominance of it. No, these
There's
are the
a lot
pockets.
much more that they're fighting for.
That is in the US.
Right.
Okay, in a country like, say, ours, which is completely patrilineal and chauvinistic
And misogynistic.
to the teeth. Okay, the difficulties are profound. Okay, now I am of this view that whenever you want to make a foray into a field such as politics, your first port of call should be facing the realities of it. Pointing it out, speaking about it, but not staying on the complaint wagon at, oh, this is the situation.
Exactly.
No, it is as it is now.
This is it.
Deal with this thing that you can see and go beyond it, because that hurdle, unfortunately, the cards are stacked against you to start with.
They're going to be
That's
there.
the
So how do
reality.
we deal with
This
it?
is what I'm saying. I think we need to jump in both feet, because the hurdles are there, and like I said, they are not going anywhere. And
No.
we can sit here and complain for years on end that yes, they're chauvinistic and misogynistic,
True.
and there's
All
always
true.
there's always going to be this prejudice against me. But then we can sit on the ropes and say, well, I'm not going to do it because do we really want to see change? Jump in, feet
Well,
first.
you're thick-skinned and you're happy to take the negative and the criticism that comes with a lot of women with great leadership attributes, a lot of character, a lot of ability. They won't go into the ring because they can't handle
Grow a thick skin,
Then
or,
this is what
find
we're saying.
people who can
No,
help you
no,
blow
no,
up.
no.
I
Being
disagree. I
thick-skinned-
think women are as thick-skinned as ever as anybody can be. They're not different. They are as thick-skinned. They want to do
If
it.
not thicker.
You're
Yes,
not
if not
faced with the
thicker.
same hostile environment. I will
Yes.
tell you from personal,
true, it's true,
from
but-
personal experience, the sort of slurs that have come my way as a result of being a woman, and she's also a woman. I had it yesterday on Twitter. Somebody said, "Well, so and so, but she's a woman," and you wonder,
look,
what is? But she's a woman. Apparently, being called a woman is an insult.
Look,
According-
against women, it may be profound and it may even stretch the limits. But the truth of the matter is there are always slurs. It will be tribal. It will be
Gender.
yes, it will be social.
colour.
It will
There'll
be
be
class.
questions.
They are always there. And look at the times when we have elections, all right? Look at the slurs that fly back and forth. The tribal innuendos are openly stated.
Sexual
These are
aggression is
things-
very different from slurs.
These
There
are
isn't-
things, they start with the slur. The slur is an indication of the mindset.
Let's start with taking a look at the traffic. Then we come back. 27 minutes to 8 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Everything nice. Spice it.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
I don't know what's going on today, but it is definitely good stuff. Everywhere you look around the city, we're not having the issues that we saw yesterday. Could be that it's Wednesday magic that's happening on our roads today. Not much traffic at all. From Mombasa Road to Ngong Road to Thika Road, I think everybody is basically gone for Christmas because we don't have traffic whatsoever. It's good tidings on the roads today. Unless you see something that I can't see right now, please do let us know. The number to call is 0719012600. From Ngong Road to Bagavi Way to Thika Road, Mombasa Road, coming off Langata Road as well. You're going to get where you're going in a very short period of time today, unless things change. But for now, enjoy it.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
issue of politics and the foray into this particular field, I think you must understand the lay of that land. I think, like with everything else, if you're talking about, let's say, corporate life or the workplace, women tend to be unfairly treated. For the longest time, women could do the same job and not be paid the same way that men were paid. And if you talk about inequalities,
Still the same.
the
not for
list
longest
will
time.
not. No, it's not entirely true, Nyeri.
It's still the same even in the UK. You'll find, I think, the way that it was put very interestingly, that in essence, for women to get to where men are in terms of earnings, they work an extra, I think it was 21 days. I'll look up those facts. It was put in a very interesting way. So we basically work 21 days free.
The point I'm getting at is those are realities you face, and those are realities you know you must overcome. But if the approach towards resolving the issue begins with acknowledging it and staying put in the acknowledgement phase, then nothing ever changes, really.
Right.
That's really what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
If, for instance, anyone wants to go into, say, an electoral position in this country, let me talk about my neck of the woods. It begins with the announcement that you intend.
Right.
I am on this show. If I were to make that statement, give it 5 minutes and I will be called that the homestead is full of people who've come to see me. Yes. All I have said is I intend to.
You do know when you're making that statement, you don't say you intend to. You said you've been forced by your people.
No, your people are demanding.
your people are demanding your leadership.
Yes. Now, what it means, therefore, is that every conceivable problem that somebody has cobbled up, imagined,
becomes
or
yours.
It immediately is transferred to you. Now, one simple reality of the politics of where I come from, so anybody who thinks or feels they want to enter, that's the first thing you face. 2, your life will stop being your own immediately.
Yep.
Okay. Now, why then go into it if you haven't considered, then complain this is happening? Then you shouldn't have gone into it in the first place. Yes. But if you're going to go into it and you're serious about it, if you can't do it, good and well. Nobody usually can on their own. Get people around you who understand the lay of the land and who can help you navigate it. That's how you do these
Get a
things.
team.
This is very interesting that you said, because we had the deputy governor for Nyeri County here the other day. And what did she say when she got this position? She said she had other people in previously held positions. She talked about other women who basically told her, look, these are the things that you're going to face. This is what's going to come at you. But here I am for support. And I think that is absolutely necessary, because you know certain things. You look, like you said, you just said, by the time you have declared your intent, you are already aware that certain things are going to come your way. As women, we already know that certain things are going to come your way. You make this intent, people are going to ask, okay, so now you're in a position, who have you slept with, who have you done, or who do you intend to sleep with? It's true.
Who have you done?
Right, exactly. And those
Not
are questions
what
that are
have
going to
you
come
done?
at you, and then how many children do you have? Or do you have children, or are we going to
Are
expect
you
that
married?
you're going
Are
to
you
get
divorced?
pregnant?
They basically
kind
have
of thing.
an
So
ethical audit
about your life,
on your proper dissection and judge
have you
you on
divorced
everything.
somebody? Do you intend to marry somebody? Did you snatch somebody's husband? Kind of thing along the way. So if we can't trust you with those things, how are we going to be able to trust you in a position of leadership? We know those things are going to come at you by virtue of the fact that you're a woman. What I am saying is that because we know these things are not new, they have been there, and for the foreseeable future, they are going to be there. In fact, probably they're going to get worse. But what we are saying, apart from wanting a position of leadership, apart from wanting to make impact in terms of governance, we already know that you're a woman. I am saying, take advantage then of those support systems that are there, and be deliberate then in saying, I'm going to put it on because I know the battle that I am going to fight. I'm going to put it on this armor and say, look, regardless of all of this, I want to get in there. And if we see more representation, when you see that the choice that you're being given involves women more, whether you like it or not, you will begin to make those choices. And I'm saying, for now, you have to be ready to, women have to be ready to make to face the fire, because they're there. They're not going to change.
It's always going to be there, and like City was saying, it's always going to be there. Just tough up and get into the ring.
This is it.
Fight it out.
No,
I think so.
And with time,
I think I want to come back to the point.
I think with
CT
time
made.
it will change.
I want to come back to the point CT made. What he was talking about is part and parcel of politics, and it applies across the board. The hurdles and sort of issues that women face leave them at an unfair advantage. And if it's going to be a competitive race,
Disadvantage, yes.
rather, sorry. And if it's going to be a level playing field, something needs to be done. And we've got affirmative action in place, but we need to be more deliberate in undoing some of this socialization that creates this bias against women. I've talked about previously creating a kitty for women so that there's more funding for women. I've talked about the notion of ensuring, of pushing the media to showcase more women, especially when it comes to governance issues. Women's voices are just not heard. Jeff Koinange has a huge following, a huge listening.
Another
He will
pet
never,
subject.
he will never bring women onto that show.
Never?
Now that he never, when he brings women, it is not to air governance issues or to debate on the
the
state of the
softer
nation.
issues, as it
It
were.
is aspirational, or this woman is a good singer and she's done this and she's done very well. If you look at the number
Really?
of women,
When Governor Anne Waiguru
they've been a
appears on
few.
Jeff Koinange's
They have, you
show,
see, we can even
does she
name.
talk about- No,
they have
yes,
been
and not just
very.
one. I'm just
Maybe-
giving
maybe
one
she had a
example.
song.
No.
Maybe Anne
There
Waiguru was
have
going
been
to release a new
very,
release.
very
No way.
few. There have been very few women, and this is a platform that shapes conversations in the country. It actually gets MPs to react to certain issues. So if women's issues are not being heard, even our leaders, i.e., MPs or MCAs, will not prioritize things that are important to women because their issues are not being publicized. So this is why women need to be given a voice. Secondly, it's to normalize the idea of women in leadership. This is one way of undoing biases. It's one way of changing behavior.
But
which
what
we
I'm
need
saying
to
is that
do.
the
How is
men
that
are
different
not
from what you're
going.
saying?
The men are not going to do it in Jerry. The men are not going
Well,
to
Jeff
change
Koinange
their
is
attitude.
definitely not going
They're
to
not
do
going
it.
to do it. And
He
this is what I
does
am
it.
saying.
And
No,
no,
those-
Jerry.
shall
No,
we-
Jerry,
it
no.
is clear
No,
that we-
Eric, let's
No.
look. We'll look at the statistics after the break. How many women have appeared on the Jeff Koinange
In
show?
this year, yes.
And how many men have?
Yes.
It is not representative of the population.
Of
I
course
will
it's
guarantee-
not.
Oh, but that's okay.
How
You
many
see? This
how
is
many
where
men,
you
how
are,
many
where-
women have appeared here?
No, it should.
Now, you
you'll
should go
see
to
that-
him and
you'll
ask him,
actually
what
see
are
there's
the-
a
what are the
balance. And I
reasons?
do, and I do.
You go
but
and ask
my
him, what are the
point
reasons
is,
for
it's an
that?
unfair representation of society, and this is a platform that does sort of decide the dominant discourse for the week, especially when it comes to governance issues and politics. Now, if it's men who are dominating that, you can see why it becomes impossible for women to even have a leg to stand on. They cannot penetrate this sphere that men have created as an old boys network.
You
So
know,
there's a lot, it's an unlevel
You know
playing
what you're
field,
saying,
and a lot
Jerry.
needs
You know
to be done.
what you're saying, which there's a case to what you're saying, but also it goes back into what CT was saying. Look, we're at a point where, yes, these things are happening, but what exactly should we do to move forward?
Well, we
first
should
of all-
stop certain
first
things
of
that are
all-
working
first
against
of all,
us. For instance, just bringing men onto media platforms.
Funding women candidates. How does that negate everything else? How does that make a
It
level playing
doesn't.
field?
I was
Is it
giving you.
because-
It's got to be a
is it because-
multi-pronged approach. It's got to be multi-pronged,
several things that need to
multifaceted.
be done.
One
By-
of them is
and-
funding. Giving women a special kitty will create or will go some way in creating an equitable solution, because it gives them a leg up. Not intended, but it gives them a sort of a platform to start reaching or undoing this advantage that they have. I then talked about normalizing disadvantage. I then talked about normalizing women leadership, and the media could play a huge role in this. I feel, in fact, this would be the biggest platform and the biggest way in which to go about ensuring that women are seen as leaders. The media does shape our perceptions. If women are shaped and framed as leaders, people will be more accepting, and this aversion to vote for women will start to reduce. And the aversion is within men and women. We've been socialized to prefer male leadership, even the women. This is the thing.
True.
Now we need to undo
But
that.
you know, there are communities that are that leaning more than others. There are communities whose aversion to electing female leaders is greater. There are others whose aversion is infinitely less. They do not have a problem. Like the community, again, I come from. We've had women leaders for the longest time possible.
Right.
And it's actually a non-issue. If you seem to have a case and people believe that you represent fair leadership, you will be elected.
You will be
Get it.
elected.
Yes, you will be elected.
And this is what I'm saying. I think that it's very clear that at some point I'm not talking about shaking off the biases, because it'll be very difficult to do that. But I am saying, with all things taken into consideration, some of these things are not going to change. And we cannot sit back and say, right, when they change, then is when we will take more action. The time to do that is now. And to say, with all of this taken into consideration, I still see the need and the importance, and I still see the impact that I can make in terms of governance and where that is involved, and say, really, jump in with it. And that is why at this time it is important, because you want to look at what you're offered, and if you look at what you're offered the dominant percentage is men, and we don't have enough in terms of what is being offered up in terms of for women, then look, by all means, they're going to select more men. But if we continue to put ourselves out there, the selection will change. With all of those things taken into consideration, those calls are going to still be there. The biases will still continue to exist. Why don't these biases
exist in certain countries? They've gone about undoing these biases. We're trying to do that through the law here with the 2/3 gender rule, of which I have some reservations about, because I don't think 2/3 is fair. We should be pushing for 50-50. But if you look at countries who've implemented the 2/3 gender rule, they've been very successful, from Bolivia through to Rwanda and so on. So you can actually push for societal change through the law, or you can actually be very deliberate and change attitudes over the years. I mean, we changed and became Christians, and that was done through socialization. And we can do the same with undoing some of these biases. And the strategies or interventions I was talking about do go some way into undoing the biases, because I genuinely feel, and this is a personal take, this pushing the 2/3 gender rule will actually experience a lot of blowback from the patriarchy in Kenya, in that men, and you've seen it, they're refusing to pass the instruments that we need in order to implement. This is a constitutional requirement, remember, and almost 10 years later, we haven't been able to implement this. And that is an example, or rather it is exemplary of the attitudes of men in this country. They have simply refused. One way or another, there's no quorum, they don't turn up, even after being put together and agreeing that yes, they will pass this 2/3 gender rule, they have refused. So I think in forcing through legal instruments, forcing people to accept women leadership, or to entertain and have this notion of more women in leadership, forcing them is not working. And we keep pushing, and it's in the constitution, but it's not working. And that's why we need to approach it from a behavioral change perspective, where we change societal attitudes as opposed to imposing this through legal instruments. We haven't managed to achieve it. How long have we had the Constitution? Since 2010.
Right.
That's 9 years to pass one bill, and it hasn't happened.
And this is what we're saying.
But forcing to have 47 women has worked.
Societal attitudes are not going to change like that. They won't. I think it'll even take longer to change these attitudes than it will to change a piece of documentation.
You've got to force
Absolutely.
it. You've got to.
No. The 47. Actually, the 47. The women's rep could have had the inverse effect, because people believe, all right, now there's a woman in Parliament, we actually don't need to vote for any other women.
Look at the example that City continues to give. Previously, girls were not sent to school. At some point, they said, you know what? Okay, fine, we're going to send. And the few that did send, and then they began to see the advantages of girls having gone to school. And because of that, more and more parents decided to send their children to school because they saw the advantage of it. But it was something that was deliberate and forced. And you won't be able to see results until you become absolutely deliberate about doing that. And that's what I'm saying. Jump in feet first.
0719-012-600. Join the conversation. Also post your comment on Facebook, Spice FM KE. Tag us on Twitter at Spice FM KE. The hashtag The Situation Room.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
I don't really think that having the 47 women reps has negatively impacted the election of women into single-person constituencies.
It is a possibility of one of the consequences.
It has actually not happened.
It is, but consider...
Who says it hasn't happened? You don't know. You don't have the statistics for that. What are the statistics?
Look,
no. What I'm talking to you about is
I gave you examples.
We don't need empirical evidence for everything, Eric.
But you asked for evidence. He wants to give it.
Can I respond? Can I respond?
Let's hear your evidence.
In Mombasa, we have a woman who is not a woman rep, right? Likoni MP. In Malindi, we have a woman who is not a woman rep. In Murang'a, we have women who are not women reps. In Nyanza, we have women who are not. Many of the members of parliament currently are actually coming from representing constituencies which are not necessarily the woman rep position.
Okay, now could they
And
have
those
been
were
more
not-
if there was no women's rep?
We did not have
Do you understand?
candidates
Now we
in
don't
those
have
other places.
statistics
We
for
don't
that.
know.
Actually, we do. Before the advent of women reps, the number of women in parliament were not as many as they
As
are
we have now.
The argument could be, with the presence of women rep, people are more aware of the representation or of women or the role of women in politics. So instead of dampening it, it's actually made it more public.
Absolutely.
Open
That
it
is
up.
one side of the coin. On the flip side of the coin, there is the argument that perhaps people now feel because we now have a women's rep, we're not going to look for other women in parliament.
What is this
It is a
supported by?
possibility.
It is a possibility,
it is
yes.
I'm just bringing it onto the table. That's how discourse goes. It
Yes,
is a
it's a
possibility
possibility,
that it
yes.
could happen.
The
That's the end of
converse
it.
discourse has
And there
some
is-
support.
Absolutely. And I've agreed. Now, what I'm saying to you
Let's
is...
hear from James. James is calling from Kisumu. Good morning, James.
Morning, Eric.
How are you doing?
I'm quite well, thank you. How are you?
Fine, well,
morning.
thank you.
Say hi to Sichi, Ndu, and Nyeri.
Good morning.
Morning, James.
Morning to you too.
Good morning.
Allow me to make a contribution. Nyeri, let me. I support the move that you people, the motion that you have today. But I would like to advise Nyeri that your worst enemy is Ndu, and Ndu, your worst enemy is Nyeri. For this reason, is because if you look at the number of women who vote, vast majority of them vote for men. We've had one female. Let me say what presidential candidate, Nazlin Umar, for the longest period. Who has ever voted for her to be the president as a woman? Nobody has. Ngilu did fight for the same position. Nobody did. So you see, we have
They actually
women.
got some
We have-
votes, James. It wasn't as though it was zero.
No, I'm
yes.
saying not zero. Even in being number 2, number 3, they never did. And you see when if you're looking at this, the women themselves, they carry the votes by themselves, but by with themselves, but they go ahead and give it to the men.
It's true, but
I remember some time back, just could be recently last year. There was a bill that was being discussed. I think could be the issue of 2/3. And then Millie Odhiambo actually stood and she was very furious, saying that they are discussing this bill and there are only two women reps in the parliament.
Great.
By that time, we only had Gladys Wanga and Sabina Shege who were present in the parliament, and yet they were discussing an issue concerning the women.
Absolutely.
So she was very furious about it. So it means that it is the women themselves who are not coming out. Basically, for myself, I'm an activist for the women. I really want to see women in power, but the women themselves, they also have to come out strongly and fight for that position and let themselves be voted in. Let the women themselves vote yourself, because you have the votes by yourself.
I do agree with you,
Go in
James.
and you will have the number.
I absolutely
Women
agree
have
with
the
you
number
on this,
more than
James,
men.
because, I mean, like I said, we can continue to complain about the issues that we see, but we are very clear that those are not going to end anytime soon. And something as basic as showing up for representation when a vote ought to be cast, and it's important for women to be there. These are some of the things I'm talking about when I say jump in with feet first. Go ahead. Jump into those deep waters. Having put on the equipment that you need in order for you not to sink. This is what I'm saying. And I think that it's time that we need to stop complaining, because these things are not going to change anytime soon. The misogyny is there, the chauvinism is there, the prejudice is there, accepted. But if we say that it is worth the fight, then we absolutely need to make sure that we go in guns blazing, because we're not going to see a change otherwise.
Well, we can say that we want to go in guns blazing, but we can also work on the factors that discourage women from going in, whether they're political, cultural, economic factors. For instance, a lot of parties need to be encouraged to actually nominate women in the first place. The political resources for women. Remember, women will be the usually primary caregivers for their family, so they'll want their money going back into their family. So perhaps a kitty should be established. So yes, women should go in all guns blazing, but into an environment that is so wrathful, vicious and hostile.
But then,
if there's factors we can actually take away, i.e. some of these that I've spoken about, that discourage women from going in. Of course, the negative stereotyping with the patriarchy. Yesterday I heard somebody saying women belong in the kitchen. I mean, that is anathema where I come from in terms of talking like that. It's
But-
reinforcing certain stereotypes, and this is the talk that we don't need. In the same way, up until 2007, we were able to talk sort of harshly about different tribes. We now realize the effect it has and the negative effect it has when we push different stereotypes of the tribe. It's exactly the same with women, but nobody's realizing this. There was a day here, well, I won't go into it, but there's things that are said that throw me off, and it's very normal here. We need to start facing these things.
Like what, for
These
instance?
reinforcements of negative stereotypes of women need to stop. Like yesterday, you were talking about a woman being in a kitchen. Now,
No, I
when you
didn't say
reinforce
that.
no, Eric.
it is you who said
Eric,
that.
no, you said we were talking
I
about.
said a woman being in the kitchen.
Yes, we were talking
Jerry, were you
about.
present?
Yes,
Because I could have said something, but you were not present.
I was
Please say-
present. We were
please say-
talking about
please
buying
quote
houses.
some- yeah.
We were talking about buying houses.
Yes.
And CT said because when they're buying a house, the woman must look at the kitchen and then
No, I
them
said
decide.
the woman will look at the kitchen. We will look. Before I finish the next statement, you jumped in.
And then Eric said something because it irked me. I remember personally, and I thought, well, this doesn't sound right, and it's a reinforcement of these
It
gender
wasn't a
stereotypes,
reinforcement,
which
no,
we
Ravi.
don't need.
Jerry,
You don't even
there are
realize you're
certain
doing it. It's an
realities that when
unconscious
people
bias,
speak
Eric.
of,
I do not realize I'm doing
You
what?
don't realize you even did it.
I realize
No,
that
you
when
don't.
I realize, and whenever we have gone looking for a house, that my wife looks at the kitchen and she bases her decision, among other things, on the size of the kitchen, and that's exactly what CT was saying. Now, whether that's a stereotype, whether
it
you
is a
think that
what
stereotype
Eric
and it's
said
a
was, I have a
reinforcement
wife,
of a
CT has a
domesticated
wife,
woman.
and this is what they will
and this is
do.
what happens.
Yes, we were not saying.
And we are not the only ones. I'm also involved in the marketing of developments, and this is one thing that comes out very clearly.
We don't need to
It comes-
reinforce.
it is not
we
a
don't need,
reinforcement.
it is a
Stereotyping. It is
reinforcement
not
of
a
a stereotype in terms of where a woman's
You
place
consider
is.
it a stereotype.
Of
but
course, it's a
it is
stereotype
not
that a woman
stereotype.
belongs in the kitchen, barefoot and pregnant.
That's your translation of it. Let's move on.
I think taking all of these things into consideration,
Barefoot and pregnant and all that, yes.
prejudices all combined, this is what I'm saying. With the softer side that a woman is, that she has been naturally given, and with the whole nurturing aspect that she has to life, it is clear that some of these aspects are the reasons as to why she would be better at governance, or at least she would be able to make greater in terms of milestones. And I am saying all of these things then need to, because we know, come on, we don't need to be told over and over again, thank you very much, Mr. Barack Obama, for letting us know that we could do better. We know that. We are aware in terms of the impacts that we can make. We know that then having been applied in governance, we'll probably be able to do it better. We'll probably be able to not see a lot of the problems that we have if somebody who is such a great manager on the domestic scene, obviously those skills can be applied even more, even at a greater height. So I am saying I'll give you an example. On the sports scene, look at someone like Serena Williams and look at what she was able to do. First of all, she's at the forefront of fighting that there be equal pay between male athletes and female athletes because she worked twice as hard. She has worked 10 times as hard over the last 10 years to beat the prejudice that came out of race, to beat the prejudice that came out of being female. And my goodness, she's come out on top. There are few male athletes that she would not be able to beat if we look at it like that. But she went in with the bias. She won a Grand Slam when she was pregnant, showing that she could do it. And this is what I'm saying.
Who's this? Serena Williams?
Yes, she did. So this is what I'm saying. That same thing should be applied.
But she was in the women's tennis. She wasn't playing against men.
No, but at the same, but here she is fighting race and fighting. She has been, because of the fact that she has been very serious about even getting equal pay. So now in some of the Grand Slams, you have the men earning what the women earn. Because of the fact that she said, look, I show that I work doubly hard to be able to get this done. And this is what I'm saying with the biases. Because let's be honest, they are not going anywhere. Right now, they are not.
The two can go alongside each other. I understand your approach is just go in for it, all guns blazing, whatever the environment. But that can happen whilst we put measures in place to undo some of these biases. There was a report from 2017 in the elections here in Kenya, and women were interviewed, and some of the obstacles they faced were unimaginable. I mean, we're talking about intimidation, sexual harassment, violence against women, gender-based insults. These are things that most women will want to stay clear of, no matter what leadership abilities you have. Now, if we don't find some way to remove these obstacles, I mean, these are criminal elements that are being brought into
Jerry,
the elective process.
Surprise. Everything you described happens to men as well in politics. Everything.
Not to the extent
Let's get to the
which
top
it
of the hour
happens to
and
women.
Open up the phone line 0719 012 600. That's 0719 012 600. Join the conversation. Our Twitter handle is at SpiceFMKE. It's 8 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your
All of
life.
Nairobi roads giving off a very good vibe this morning. Not much traffic, but let's see how things may have changed in just a short while. Really nothing much to report on Gong Road. Things are looking good. Trying to get into the city from Westlands and using the Wayaki Way coming down is not a problem either. Mombasa Road, we have a little bit of a hold up right about Cabanas, but that will open up in a short while once you get past the General Motors. Embakasi traffic. A bit of a problem this morning, but not so much. You'll get out of that as fast as possible. Bugavi Way, Gong Road and Langata Road are serving off fantastic vibes this morning. Absolutely brilliant. Not a problem getting into the city centre. We'll see if that changes in a short while. Let us know if you find up any hold up anywhere at 0719 012 600. Let's make sure you keep moving this morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Jerry Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is
We're
the
talking about women in
Situation
leadership and
Room,
increasing
the only way
number
to
of
start
women in
your
leadership.
day.
Nduoko is saying it's about time that also women decide and make a conscious decision to get in feet first.
Right.
Toss yourself in the ring.
Well, absolutely. Because then the thing is, you pick from what you have in front of you. I mean, I always give the example of a buffet. You're going to pick from the selection that is in front of you. And if you don't have more in terms of numbers, like 1, 2, 3, then you're not going to pick what you see. And I am saying that in order to get there, it's going to be bloody, sweaty, and tearful. But we need to get to that point whereby you have the representation there in order for people to make a selection. Yes, there have been strides that have been made, but it is not enough. Because we keep complaining day in, day out. We see that governance has not given the impact or the kind of impact that we want to see. We're not getting the results that we want to see, not just in Kenya, the globe, around the globe. And we're saying that it is definitely time for the injection of all women. It has been clear in countries whereby the representation of women is quite high, what they have been able to achieve. And that should be the overriding factor in all of this, to say, what do we want to achieve? Not just so that women can be there, but so that they can actually lend a hand to positive development. Because yes, there is negative development. For positive development, and say, yes, this is where we are going as nations, not as individuals. And I am saying the only way for them to see us, the only way for them to see you, is if you throw your hat in the ring. All biases observed.
But consider also that many women may not necessarily be interested in politics. You can explain it, you can state it the way you like, but they're not. If you look at the percentages of women representatives in the so-called developed countries, you would be amazed at how well we do against them. New Zealand, the highest by far, 40%, 40%. UK, 32. Australia, 30. Canada, 27. The US, 23. So it isn't anything adverse or untoward. Sometimes this is one profession that women, for whatever reasons or understand the lay of the land, do not take a particular interest in.
But then there are quite a number of women who do take an interest in, but they are dogged by the fears or the insecurities that have been fed them over time. And this is what I'm saying. Those fears and insecurities and those prejudices are there. But then I'm saying we need to cross over because they will continue to be there. And we cannot say that, okay, I'll give an example. My mother went to school at a time when she went to university and graduated as the first pharmacist, the first graduate who was a woman in that entire village. And we're talking about almost 10,000 people. And because of that, I see people today who say that the only reason I went to school is because of the example that your father took to send you to school.
She was a pioneer.
And that's what I'm saying. It has to be deliberate. It's not going to be easy. People used to ask my grandfather, what are you wasting your money for sending a girl to school? But look at what she was able to do till today.
Changes the perception of everybody else.
Absolutely changes the perception. So the fears and the insecurities and the prejudices will be there. They've been there since time immemorial.
And they'll continue to be.
And they will continue to be there.
Let's hear from Paul in Mombasa. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Jerry, today allow me to sound a bit off. Huh? I think, Sid, you're right. If I don't remember you saying it, but I think women belong to the kitchen. That is just my stance.
That's an unfortunate statement, but carry on.
Yeah. The big reason is, you see even what Jerry is doing today is whining about what women have not been given.
I'm coming up with solutions as well. I'm not whining. Don't make false accusations. I'm coming up with solutions.
Okay, okay, fine.
Oh.
But when you come up with solutions, but forever women are just whining on what they have not been given, what they deserve. Men don't concentrate on that. Men will always shed off that and see the solution ahead and go ahead. You see, like when you're saying that women have not been given the opportunities, actually the man in Kenya today is at risk.
Of
because
extinction.
You go to university, entry, the women have been given an opportunity better than the men. So how are they using it?
And so because of that, they remain in the kitchen? Because of the fact that they've been...
Why? Women belong to the kitchen. Why? They are better managers to the kids.
Is it only the kitchen that they can be a manager? Is it only in the kitchen that they can be a manager?
I don't think it's referring to the kitchen as a geographical location.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, in the house with children, but...
Yes, but
women are mothers.
Yeah, they're mothers.
And they can be mothers of nations as well. If you transfer those skills into governance and leadership, you will see far safer countries. You will see proper service provision. You will see proper education facilities. You will see proper health facilities. Because women care for children, for their brothers and sisters. Women are more caring.
Careful.
No, women are more caring. And what we need to do...
Yes, Paul.
What am I careful about?
Yes, Paul, conclude.
I'm very much in agreement with you that they are better managers, but not to the nation, but to the house.
But how will we know if about the nation if we don't give them an opportunity, if we don't create a political landscape that's safe?
We've given a lot of women chances in this
We've
country.
given men an opportunity.
How many female presidents have we had?
Let him finish.
How many female presidents have we had?
We've just given them positions, actually, unbiased positions for women. What are they doing with it?
Oh, right.
How many female presidents have we
They're
had?
representing, Paul.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
Right.
What the women reps are actually doing, they are doing exactly the same thing as the other constituency MPs are doing. That's what they are supposed to do. Legislation, oversight, and everything else.
I expected when we say that women are coming to the forefront, is that when we give them these positions,
When
would
can
see
we just
them
be clear about who we is? When we give them, who is
The
we?
country.
You're so
The
far
country
gone.
The country that's made up of 50% women as well, isn't it? The
Yes.
same country that we're talking about?
They are more than men, yes.
Exactly.
They're
So
more
when you
than
say we have given to them. And then
We-
they...
men. Nyeri, please.
No, this is Ndu
When
actually.
I say we,
Let him
yeah.
Same thing.
Oh,
Women.
My
According to
God,
him.
it's all,
But I'm
all
saying
look alike.
I'm looking at the whole country. As a people, we have decided in the constitution that the women come in as women rep. What I expected, actually, the main thing that would have come out is for them to uplift more ladies and women into political powers in appointed political positions, because if they are there now in parliament, they have numbers. They can change things. But what happens? Whenever decisions are being made in parliament, they are not there.
Okay. Well, they
Even
clearly
decisions that-
they don't have enough numbers to pass the 2/3 gender rule. So no,
but
they
even
don't have the
The ones
numbers.
that the parliament don't appear when they are making critical decisions that affect
You
the
know, he
women
actually does
themselves.
have a point.
Paul, in fairness, the 47 women rep positions are basically MPs, just like the other MPs, okay? So when
MPs,
when they
they're
go to
part of-
parliament, they have the same power, they have the same votes. Now, let's also be fair in terms of auditing their performance as well. So yes, there are some instances where we find MPs not in the House, and among those MPs include the 47. But there are also some instances where we see those MPs also pushing bills and legislation that passes through Parliament. So yes, if you were to look at their performance, I think it would be unfair to single them out as opposed to just looking at it as a performance of the entire Parliament.
I'm
No,
actually...
the performance of the entire parliament. You know, ladies are so influential, and they have these possessive powers.
Yes.
So I expect one out of the 47, we should be having double persuaded men to go their way because they know what to do.
Who?
Yeah.
Women?
Yes,
Outside the
they have
kitchen
this
or?
natural power?
He's talking about
They
parliament.
have natural power. They have been okay. It's just a natural thing in women that even if you want to get to your dad, most of the times there are things you will use your mother to get your dad.
So these are the
Because
same
there
women
is-
that would use the influence to get to a position where you say they should not.
Yes.
The same women.
The thing is that they whine and they do not concentrate on their powers, on their abilities.
We hear you,
Okay,
Paul.
thank you, Paul.
Concentrating what they can use better, they concentrate on whining.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
0719-012-600. Usikuwe na makasiriko, Ndu.
I'm actually glad that he
Usikuwe
said that because
na
this is one.
makasiriko.
No. I'm actually not upset. I'm actually initially I was, but I think it's actually good because then you see another kind of prejudice that you must then overcome. And I'm saying,
Now
with
also
all
be
of that,
objective in listening to him.
with
But
all of
I think,
with
well,
all of that, it is necessary to take that also into consideration and say yes. Again, we've seen it very clear. There are people who think in a certain manner. However, take that also into consideration, and this is another thing then that must be fought. Yep.
The other context of it is, I think when we have the 47 and those 47 were meant, the whole idea of the Constitution is to have those 47 as champions to ensure that we increase the number of representation, we increase the presence and the visibility of women in leadership. Have they done a good job? From where I stand, I think they've done a splendid job. In those 2 terms that we've seen those 47 women in parliament, splendid job.
What
in
have they
terms
done?
of
What's splendid about
in
what
terms
they've
of
done?
in terms of
been
representation and
vocal.
visibility and vocality, they have been there. We have seen the number of the pieces of legislation that they've brought into parliament. We were talking about one of them the other day, Sabina Chege's bill that had gone through up to the final reading in the previous parliament.
Right.
It's back. It's going through the same motions. Millie Othiambo has done a tremendous number of bills actually that have gone through parliament. We have seen women in parliament actually doing much more. But if we look at it from the lens of they're supposed to be representing women, that's where we go wrong. Because they go into parliament, they're supposed to be representing the country. But yes, they have also that added task and expectation that because you're there, you're supposed also to
And I think there's also a misconception that
advance
should be
this
shared because
conversation.
it seems as though the 47 women reps, for example, are actually there to champion the rights or the interests of women, which is not the case. And I think that's also something.
It's one among.
I'm saying, but it's for a lot of the gentleman who just called now. They believe that it is solely for the interests of women, and it isn't. It really isn't. And I think that's one thing that needs to be made very clear.
Indeed, this is the conversation. The conversation continues on our social media platforms as well. Spice FM KE on Facebook, at Spice FM KE is our Twitter handle, and our individual Twitter handles. You can tag us as well. CT Muga at Nyeri, Thorn at Nduwako, at Eric Latif. Hashtag The Situation Room. We're live streaming the show as well. www.spicefm.co.ke. Go to YouTube. Spice FM KE is our channel. We're broadcasting around the country: Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi. It's 14 minutes past 8 o'clock.
.1 Spice FM. Kisi.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
At 8:15, this conversation continues. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. My name is Eric Latif. We have Nduwako, Nyeri, Thorn, CT Muga. And I've said everyone.
Eric Latif.
I've said everyone, right? I started by saying my name is Eric Latif. Okay. So, let's talk about something that has been happening in the country, of course. Since the introduction of the credit referencing in the country, this had been a push since the 80s and 90s. And then in this decade, we saw the introduction of Credit Reference Bureau. 3 of them were registered by the central bank, and their regulations on how CRBs should operate. Of course, they are governed by various pieces of legislation: the Banking Act, the Microfinance Act, the Circle Societies Act, where Credit Reference Bureau are supposed to be receiving credit information from these lenders, and then they collate that information. They're supposed to create a credit score, and if you have a negative credit score, it impacts on your credit worthiness. If you have a positive credit score, it should impact on your credit worthiness as well. What we have seen is a number of cases where people have been cited by the Credit Reference Bureau because information has been sent to them by people who have lent the money, let's say banks, the mobile lenders, microfinance institutions or SACCOs, and because of defaulting for a number of times within a couple of months, like let's say 3 months, you actually now get cited by the CRB, and therefore the next lender will just query the CRB and they're given your credit score, and then you don't qualify for a loan. Now, what happens when you have actually you've been a good person? If you've been complying, if you've been repaying your loans on time, if you've been paying your utility bills on time, if you're a good person in terms of your credit history, what should happen is you should get a positive credit score. What should happen as well? The converse of what is happening when you have a negative one should be happening. But do we see that happening? The problem is we don't. And I think we should push our financial institutions to get to that point where they start using positive credit rating to the advantage of would-be borrowers.
Yeah, I think that's the system they have set up abroad, whereby you have good credit and bad credit. So it's not just you in the negative or at zero. Of course, here, this is clearly being done for the financial institutions, for the protection of these financial institutions, to protect them from, I suppose, recurrent or regular defaulters. But I think there is also an element whereby it does protect the individual borrowing. If borrowing is made too easy in today's world, we've seen a lot of young fellas borrow to gamble, and it's very easy. It's at the tip of your fingers. A lot of these fintech companies that are willing to lend you money, it's just an application process. Now you don't even have to fill in your name. You can log in with Facebook. So it's just at a click of a button, and you have access to funds. So if you have defaulted previously, perhaps it's indicative of your ability to repay. And so by not lending you money as a result of the CRB listing, they could be protecting you from drowning yourself in further debt. So it works twofold. In terms of encouraging lenders to give you money. I think lenders do go some way in doing their own research and in determining how much they should lend you. So if you don't have a bad credit, then they also look at your income and they can lend you more. So I don't think you have to have positive credit to get more money. They actually look at other things, your income or collateral that you give. I don't see the usefulness of being given good ratings, good credit points.
I'm not even sure the ratings matter. If you are listed, that's it. The moment you're listed, financial institutions take it that you are unlendable too.
You're a high risk.
Yes, extremely high risk. So the likelihood of actually being lent money falls to zero because
Unless you have collateral.
even if you have collateral, the moment you're on a clean CRB report is the first port of call. The moment there's a mention, it doesn't matter what the amount is. You will not move further with that application.
And we've come
It's
across
a
a lot
question
of
tree.
stories.
You
Yes.
fall at number one.
Yes, that's it. You will not move further.
Yes, if yes, proceed. If no,
Get
end.
out. And a lot of people have actually complained that because of a small loan, 500 bob, or, it was forgetfulness, one reason or another, they found it very difficult to actually get credit. But I think it's also quite easy to get yourself off the CRB. It's not sort of you're listed for 6 years like you would say in the UK, even after paying back, because it's a determination of your repayment habits as opposed to even what you owe. I think here, if you pay all your debts and you pay 2,000 shillings, you can be cleared.
Being listed doesn't mean that they don't give the details of your listing. When you take
your records are still there.
when you actually borrow money, you enter that database. Just borrow. How else do they know that you can repay? So the moment you borrow, that information is taken to the CRB. So they have that information. They have information of who you've borrowed from, your payment record, and also your non-payment record. They have all that. Now, the point at which we are now coming in is we're saying that what happens with this reference bureau is that it becomes something that perhaps it wasn't intended, or perhaps it was intended, or it wasn't, but that's how it is used by institutions. The moment you're listed adversely, now adversely means you have a debt you haven't paid. That's it. That loan will not proceed.
So
the application
once-
comes to an abrupt end.
How easy
Which
is it
actually
to
should
take
not be the
yourself-
case, because the CBK, the regulations for CRB say that the financial institution, the lender, should not just use this information alone.
That's what
they
they
should
do.
use
But
this
they also have the
information
prerogative
plus
to do what they
others.
want.
No, they are told you don't just use this alone. In fact, if I don't give you, if I don't give you a loan, I cannot tell you just because you've been listed on CRB.
But it's still their
because
right to
you've been listed
decline,
on CRB. Of
any-
course, yes, but it's because you've been listed on CRB. Number one, and number two, you're asking for too much or whatever other reason. But this cannot be the only reason why. That because you've been listed on CRB cannot
But
be
you
the
can
only
also
reason
get
why.
out of CRB. This is what I'm talking about. This
You can.
record. By paying back your debt, and
You
I
can.
think you pay 2,000 shillings, and then there is no record of you ever having
No,
been
no,
a
no, no,
defaulter.
No.
Your record
You have to
stays.
pay off the debt. Your record still stays, but you will now not be listed adversely.
So does everybody who has ever borrowed? Yes, anybody who's ever borrowed, whether or not they've repaid, is listed.
You're listed.
Your
Yes.
classification, basically, you're classified as doubtful, right?
Yes.
Oh, so there is a classification.
Yes,
you're
there is.
You're classified as doubtful if you have what we're calling being listed on CRBs. You're classified. You're classified as
Right,
a doubtful
so
borrower
if you
because
repay your
in
debts-
the last couple of of months you defaulted. Now
Yes.
the CBK increased that and said in the last 6 months. Don't just look at 3 months. So 6 months prior, if you look at your credit history over that time, once you pay, you still remain as doubtful for some time
How
before
long?
you actually get out. I'll tell you just shortly. I'd seen it earlier. I'll tell you shortly, but it's about I think 3 months prior.
Right, as opposed to
Post
6
that.
years, which you would have bad credit for in somewhere like the UK.
No, it isn't bad credit. Your record, that bad record stays for the
Eric
next.
says that it's doubtful, which is bad
It
credit.
is, but I'm not saying anything different from Eric. I'm just giving it in. I'm just giving you further details. I'm saying that record is not mentioned as being adverse. Doubtful is adverse to you, the borrower, but the record stays. Meaning, it will not be held against you because it will be clear you've cleared your debt. So, for purposes of our lending institutions, you can now be allowed to borrow.
But for the first 3 months, you remain doubtful, apparently. Or is it 3 months?
In this country, that record stays, I
It
think,
stays.
for 5 years or
Yeah.
something.
It stays.
Yeah, I think
Was
it's
it
7
5
years.
years?
I think
Oh,
it's 7 years,
years.
actually. It's the record stays for 7 years in Kenya. So I for the
So
next
the financial
this is what they're
institution
saying.
can
And
just look back
the
and say,
financial
but
institution could
you have been listed
decide-
more than once in those 7 years. Therefore, of course, you're doubt.
Okay.
You're
now-
doubted, but I think the decision now rests with the financial
lender.
institution that you are
I-
dealing with.
Okay, I think there needs to be more regulation on the CRB because you're having people getting listed over 500 shillings.
Two.
And,
Or
200.
even 200 shillings.
200 shillings. So I
Yes.
think there needs to be a set amount. The CRB is working more towards or for these financial institutions as opposed to for the people. They need to balance that because if you're being registered or put on the CRB list for 200 shillings, in 7 years' time, you might be in a position where you can get a mortgage, or 5 years' time, where you can get a mortgage. Your situation has changed in terms of your earning capacity. And
Right.
because of this 200 shillings, it affects your life forever.
And I think I do agree, Eric. I think that is something that should be used to regulate your rating as opposed to what it has been seen up till now, which is punitive when you've not been able to pay a loan of 100 shillings,
Right.
200 shillings.
Yes.
And it shouldn't be punitive like that. It should be a regulator in terms of then, okay, this is, the threshold within which you can borrow certain amount kind of thing, and a report that would come from them that would then be forwarded to a financial institution.
Let me give you an example
There are people
how-
for whom it doesn't do anything.
How a positive credit rating should help you, right? So in the case of insurance, for instance, if you insure with the same insurance company for a number of years, if you have not made a claim in the previous year and you want to renew your claim, your insurance, you can renegotiate your rate.
No claims bonus.
Yes.
Right. So the same thing should apply as well for a positive credit rating. You should actually be able to negotiate your
A
interest
lower,
rates.
a lower
A
interest
lower
rate.
Low
interest rate.
interest rate.
And this is how it should be working for you. So if you're a good, borrower and you've been paying well, then you should be able to go to the bank, and the bank should be able to come and tell you,
is
you
a
know,
very
you can
slippery
actually.
slope. The flip
How is
side
it
of
fl-
that is, of course, subprime lending, which is what led us to the financial crisis. Where if you have bad credit, we will still give you credit, but at a serious interest rate where it's exorbitant. Now, that's what led to the financial crisis because of that credit rating system, whereby, yes, if you have good credit, you can negotiate your rates. But similarly, if you have bad credit, we can negotiate rates and we will give you, the subprime. That was what subprime lending was. And if we get into that quagmire, we can see ourselves where the West was with the financial crisis. That's what led to it. So that these people are still defaulters. It doesn't mean they can repay any better, but imagine with higher interest rates. In fact, the people who don't default should be the one being given the higher interest rates because clearly they can afford it and they're disciplined. So if you're giving higher interest rates to the people who have defaulted, then what you'll find is there'll be more defaults and more money being lost.
Remember that in this country, that is unlikely to happen because if you are listed with the CRB, you will not get a loan. It's not complicated.
You will not. I mean, that's just it.
It's not complicated. You will not get.
Right.
Credit rating, maybe, but you will not. You get that loan when you remove yourself or when that loan has been repaid. And there's a letter from the institution indicating that you have repaid that loan. Now, there's something called Okoa Jahazi. It's on Safaricom. The people who've been listed because of that Okoa Jahazi.
Okoa Jahazi is when, because there's
You borrow
Fuliza
credit
as
for
well.
you
That's when you borrow
Airtime.
credit, airtime. You
Yes.
can be listed for that.
Yes, you can.
Good Lord. See,
Indeed.
there is a level of regulation that needs to come into it. Who regulates the CRB?
It's a
bureaus?
CBK. Yeah.
CBK. Well, they need to regulate them and bring about some laws that prevent you from being listed for certain amounts of money. So anything below, say, 5,000 shillings.
I don't
for
think you
instance.
should. I think you should be listed for all amounts of money. If you've borrowed, you have borrowed.
Why should I be penalized?
Not,
for
you're not being penalized. You basically
You haven't paid.
You haven't paid.
There is negative consequences for me
Yes.
not having paid back my 20 shillings. I was going to say
That-
Mulika Mwizi. 20
that
shillings.
is
Okoa Jahazi.
Welcome, is the instrument. Yes.
My
It is
Okoa
somebody's-
which I've used, by
It
the
is
way.
somebody's
Not
money.
lying.
You have borrowed.
No,
from
but
it.
hold on.
See, this is the
If-
Kenyan.
no,
this is the Kenyan
no,
thing of
why should I be
how much are you
penalized?
asking? It's 100 bond anyway.
Only.
Yes, wait.
No.
Why are you listed?
Why should I be penalized for having not paid back 20 shillings and get the same penalty for somebody who didn't pay back 20 million?
The 20 shillings is not, you're looking at it from your point of view of one individual. If there are 1 million subscribers, that's 20 million shillings outstanding.
Absolutely. So what they're doing here is they're protecting, of course, Safaricom, but you'll find that a lot of these institutions, the interest rates are so high that they mitigate against these mass defaulters, if there are mass defaulters. So the institution is already protected. It doesn't need further protection from the threat of CRB. The institutions are making money. If you look at Safaricom's
the real
returns,
threat actually is ignorance, because if people understood good financial management, just understood it, they would know that with anything that you have borrowed, so long as it appears you're making an attempt to pay, someone doesn't actually hassle you. Most people don't know this. They feel they must pay the amount being asked for, and they'll probably go into a tears or a complete panic.
Right.
So now they don't pay at all. Whereas if they continue just making some token payment, they would not be listed. The listing comes about when there's no activity, no communication, no payment, nothing. Yes. I don't know of records where people have actually been paying, even if it's in small amounts, and have been listed. I haven't heard of.
So here's
if
what
there
happens.
is, maybe
Of
one of our
course,
callers will tell us.
the information is sent from your lender to the CRB, and this is just a requirement. So CRB is just a database, okay? So, and then they use that database they're allowed to commercialize that database in other ways. But the information is basically from your lender to the CRB. It just goes in there, and they're supposed actually to file this information on a daily basis. So I've lent a loan to Eric Latif, and this is how much, and this is supposed to be repaying monthly on the 5th. So if it gets to, and we have, of course, a window period between the 5th and the 7th or something like that. If it gets to the 15th of every month and Eric has not submitted his repayments, then, of course, I forward that to the CRB. It goes in, and over a certain number of times, of course, you are flagged. You have not repaid over 3 months or over 4 months. Now we're talking about over 6 months, for instance. So if it doesn't matter whether it's 200 bob, you shouldn't be borrowing and you cannot repay. And if you
That's
cannot
the
repay,
ethical-
go and
yes, that's all
renegotiate.
very well
Go
and
and
good.
renegotiate with your lender. If you have not negotiated with your lender, then information just keeps going back to the CRB on a daily basis, because your lender must submit this information.
and you see nothing wrong in me getting the same treatment for not paying back 50 bob as somebody who didn't pay back 20 million. You see nothing wrong with that. You don't see any injustice.
That is actually the essence of my conversation this morning. I am saying you should get your credit rating, should also determine your credit worthiness. If you're rated highly, you are
No, I'm talking about the defaulting aspect.
Yes,
So somebody has
and even
defaulted.
the defaulting aspect, it also determines your credit rating.
So somebody
You're maybe
who has
0,
default-
-1, -2, -3,
or depending on the amount.
depending on your yes.
Actually, it isn't the amount.
It is
Your
your behavior.
you borrow what you can afford. The guy of 20 million can afford 20 million. The guy of 20 bob, they're the same.
Right. It's in the principle of
Yes,
all of this. That
yes,
is where, that's
yes.
where it
It's
is.
not the amount.
I think these
It's
institutions.
how if you don't repay and you have defaulted over a full year, then of course your credit rating is worse than somebody who has defaulted for 2 months.
But these institutions, I think they're too quick to go to CRB, and they've used it actually as a tool to intimidate a lot of defaulters. There's no need to go this way. For somebody who's borrowed what is it called? When you borrow the credit, the airtime one. Okwaja. I do it. I'm not even acting cool. I have done it. For somebody who's done that to go into a CRB, I think that's unfair. It can affect future lending. As we say, even if you repay it, it still stays on record that you have been a previous defaulter. Is this really the route to go for these financial institutions? Whereas they're already charging high interest rates on the basis that it's because they can't get everybody to pay, so this mitigates from defaulters. I think the CRB is working with the institutions and not the people.
It's 28 minutes to 9 o'clock. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads.
Traffic.
So there's a bit of an issue around Sultan Hamid this morning, and that's because 90 passengers then who should have been coming back to Nairobi on the Modern Coast bus have been left stranded on the road because there was fear that the NTSA license that was re-granted has now been withdrawn yet again. So we have a situation happening there right now, and people are not able to make their way into Nairobi because of this, and there's a lot of hue and cry at the moment because the two buses have been impounded for violating the ban by the NTSA. So there are individuals now on the side of the road, and that is happening as we speak. Other parts of the road, Muranga Road jam is at a standstill. We don't know why, but we'll find out in just a short while. Vehicles are not moving in any way, shape or form, unfortunately. Apart from that, everything else seems to be moving actually quite smoothly this morning. From Mombasa Road to Langata Road, no problems whatsoever. If you do see a problem, do let us know, and we'll let you know in a short while what's happening on Moranga Road.
.1 Spice FM. Kisi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
So as of July this year, more than 2.7 million people had been flagged by this Credit Reference Bureau, 3 of them. Many of them had loans, 400,000 loans of 200 bob and below.
Wow.
400,000 loans of 200 bob and below among those that have been flagged. Many of them, 17%, have been found to have been borrowing from one digital loan to pay another.
And if you think of the psychology behind the credit reference
You
bureau,
borrow from Peter to pay. Who's the other guy that
Paul.
you pay?
Paul.
Yeah, that one.
If you think of the psychology, I think once you've been flagged or you've been blacklisted, then you don't have any motivation to repay your loan. If it was 200 shillings, and you think, oh, well, I've been blacklisted and it's not going to come out for 7 years. Why should I bother to pay it?
No, the coming out doesn't prevent. It just means you are on the list. It doesn't mean that once you pay, you cannot now then borrow. You can.
Oh, you can then access
Yes, you can.
money.
And it doesn't mean that everything else, all other conditions by your lender don't apply. So, for instance, if your lender has power to come and auction you, they'll come and auction you.
For 200 bob?
Yes.
I think the fuel for them to come to my house would be more than 200
It's
shillings.
the principle of
The
it.
principle of it. And remember,
They're going to go to 400,000 households to auction for 200
For
shillings.
200
If
shillings.
they were that way inclined, they're not
Yes.
that way inclined. But the truth of the matter is that if you borrow from a certain platform, it's because you found it useful. And the prohibition is what would be harmful to you or deterrent to you. So you don't want to be in a position where you can't access the money. So that in itself should be motivation for paying.
You're usually against these banks and lending institutions and fintech companies. I'm surprised that you're not sort of going at the CRB,
It's not a financial institution.
hammer and tongue. Well, it seems to be showing a lot of clemency towards these banking and these lending institutions.
No.
It seems to be working for them.
The CRB is neutral. They don't take sides. They are given information. That's all. They
It's
act
just a
on the information
database.
they are given.
The
They don't
banks-
make the policy.
The banks send information to the
So
CRB.
who makes the
lenders.
policy? It's
The banks.
the central bank.
What policy?
As to what should be registered as defaulting or not, and the credit rating
Yes, that's
and
in
so
the
on.
regulations. That's listed in the CRB regulations by the central bank.
By the central bank.
Yes.
So perhaps
Yes.
the central bank needs to revisit this and actually understand that if you owe 10 bob credit loan, you shouldn't be listed.
If I am a lender, all right, and I'm a lender who actually is giving out loans in denominations of 10 bob, it's my business.
Right.
And if you default and somebody else defaults, you are actually impacting my business.
But you
So it
already
matters
charge
a lot.
exorbitant interest rates in order to mitigate for the defaulters.
How do I recover that interest rate? By you paying. So
Yes,
as long
but
as
there'll
you're
be
paying
others-
zero,
no, the
even
idea of
that
a high
interest I am
interest
not
rate-
making.
The idea of a high interest rates to mitigate against defaulters is the ones who pay will actually have paid back the money from those who don't pay. That's the rationale behind it. I just find it unfair that you're going to be listed over 200 bob. And these lenders, they're unscrupulous. They do target you. They do come for you. They do encourage you. So maybe the lenders need to be taught.
You are
No,
coming from the perspective
lenders
that
need to-
200 shillings isn't an enormous amount of money. To some people, it is.
That person who
Not to
borrowed
these
200 bob
institutions.
wanted to borrow
No.
200 bob because
Not
they
to these
needed 200 bob.
institutions. Perhaps these institutions
Even the
need to be
institution-
taught to lend responsibly, and so they don't need that safety net and that backing that they,
They
have
do.
from
Jerry,
the
you know what
CRB.
you're
They
saying?
do.
Operate. Think of Mama Eric's kiosk, right? Somewhere who sells, whereas of course in small quantities, makes 10 bob, a bob, at 2 shillings. Selling sugar in small denominations. Same. If people come and borrow from this shop and they're not repaying, what happens to that business? That business
It
collapses.
dies, right?
Then don't lend.
Just because
you have a lot of places, bars, shops, restaurants that don't give credit.
Yeah, because
now,
I
if you're
sell.
the business
Now,
of giving credit,
in my business of giving credit, I want people to come and borrow. and I want them to pay. That's how we're going to be surviving, both of us. You will repay, and I will continue in business, and I will borrow, lend to you again, and lend to others again. So if you don't repay, it doesn't matter whether you're not repaying 10 bob or 200 shillings. You're basically impacting a business, and you're going against our agreement. You borrowed 200 bob knowing full well how you needed to repay.
Or you borrowed 200 bob knowing that the requirement was that you pay it back.
Yes.
Essentially.
Maybe
So
the
again, we're
interest
looking at the
rates-
principle of all
within
of
a
this,
certain
regardless
time.
of the
Maybe
amount.
if the interest rates were reasonable, I would have repaid. So we need to also encourage these lending institutions to lend not just responsibly, but also to lower their interest rates.
It's nothing to do with the interest
They're
rates. Njeri.
exorbitant. They are. Sometimes maybe somebody can't
They
afford
may be
it.
exorbitant, but it has nothing to do.
If you borrow
Before
10,000
the advent
shillings,
of these fintechs, we had loan sharks. We still have loan sharks. People still go to loan sharks. People at the same time go to banks. The people who go to banks and
It
go to
doesn't
loan
make it
sharks.
ethical.
The people who go to banks and go to fintechs.
it
You're
doesn't
talking
make
about
it
a
ethical.
borrowing
Banks are
culture
also
that we
operating
have in
mobile
this
lending
country
apps.
against a repaying culture. That is what is bad. People in this country do not pay their loans well.
People don't pay their debts.
Yes.
Someone
But
comes and
because
borrows and
these
tells you, you know
interest
what,
rates
Siti,
are also
I'm in
exorbitant.
a fix. I need 3K. Right, just sort me out 3K by Monday. I'll have sent
That's
it back
it.
to you, and that's it. You give him that 3,000 bob. Then the next time you're asking, wait, what happened?
Well, you
to my
don't
money?
give money you can't afford to lose. That's a general rule of thumb. And you don't lend your friends either, because that's a sure way to end friendships.
Exactly, because people will
end
not pay
friendships.
because people have just, it's a habit. It's just something they think about. I'm borrowing money, I'm not going to pay it. From the very beginning, when this person is going to borrow this 200 bob, 1,000 bob, 100,000 shillings, if their mindset is I'm not going to pay, they're not going to pay. If their mindset is I want to pay, but because of other extraneous circumstances I've not been able to pay, you'll come back to the person and say, well, I'm having problems here and there. And now you negotiate with your lender and agree this, because the lender, the biggest interest for the lender is for you to repay my loan. Get to that point.
So maybe if they didn't have such exorbitant interest rates, I would repay.
It's nothing to do with
loan.
the interest rates.
No, if you borrow 1,000 bob and you have to pay it back as 13,000 shillings, then yes,
No,
that's a good.
that's not how it
no,
works.
sorry, if you borrow 10,000 rather, and you have to pay it back as 13,000 shillings,
Again, it doesn't
which is,
work like
it
that.
does. That's about a 30%.
No, it doesn't quite work like that.
How does it work?
If you look at the interest rate charged by these fintech companies, to pay that 3,000 shillings you're saying, you probably need to borrow 30,000. Okay, so it comes to 10%. Why it's expensive
In a
is
month.
it's charged on a monthly basis, but it's not 30% per month.
Okay.
No. So if you default for 2-3 months, of course it'll multiply. But if you pay a little bit, what they then do, then you reduce the amount on which the interest is actually charged. There is a whole cycle here of mismanagement of money, and there's a whole thought process about repayment of debts that seems to be absent from this discussion, and that's why I'm bringing it in. Kenyans do not have a good culture of repaying debts. And what we're discussing here is the result of that culture.
Is it financial literacy? Are you saying? So there's
It's-
something that I
it
should have borrowed.
contributes.
Maybe I should
It
not even have
contributes.
borrowed to
Right.
to do whatever I needed to do. But
It
then I borrowed
contributes,
money
but
and
then
I
I think
knew I don't
also,
have.
I think other things contribute as well. There's the whole culture of living beyond your means. There's a whole culture of, then having been strained where resources are concerned, and you think, okay, there's a quick fix that is needed for this current problem. And then when the cash flows return, then it's not a priority to pay because then other things come up. I think it's a mix and match of many things, and that's why we see these different attitudes being played out. I mean, look at the numbers that you've given, are staggering. 400,000 loans of 200 shillings and below. I mean, this is somebody, obviously, there are some people for whom 200 shillings is a big deal, and it was what was needed to close the gap at that point. But then when the cash flow comes, then the 200 shillings is not a priority then of what needs to
It's
be
not even
paid
a
because
priority.
the
It
other
isn't
things
there.
take over. It's not even there because by the time more money comes in, everything then is taken over.
What's missing from this conversation, CT, is the fact that these banks and these institutions have to also lend responsibly, in that their terms and conditions have to be understandable and transparent, which usually they aren't. In fact, it's usually small print and it's something you don't see.
5 pages.
But also they have to ensure that the person can actually afford the loan. Usually they're just advertising and encouraging people to get into debt.
Actually, they do consider that. They do.
If the
They do.
person...
If you applied for a loan and somebody works for you applied for a a loan, the likelihood of you getting the same amount of money would not be this. It wouldn't be.
Right.
You do give details. There's no lending institution.
They ask you.
They make sure
questions,
you
kind
can
of thing.
afford to repay them, but at what cost to yourself in terms of how far will you be stretching yourself? So it's still self-interest. It's not for yourself. In that these lending institutions, I think if the CBR also worked for the people in that...
CRB.
What did I say?
CBR.
It's long. It's nearly
That's the
Christmas.
other institution.
It's...
As a central bank rate.
It's nearly Christmas. I think they also could go some way in ensuring that lenders lend responsibly by saying, well, anything under this amount, or if you haven't given the person this long, i.e. 6 months, then perhaps we're not going to actually list that. So increase the time, i.e. if you don't pay your loan the first month, they can't register you at the CRB. Maybe give it 6 months. That gives somebody more time to pay.
It has
And
actually
also-
gone to 6 months.
Is it 6?
As of October, November. Yes, 6 months. The new circular by CBK.
Right. So the
That's 6
CBK
months.
picked up on this and they've put in policy, or they've put in measures to ensure that people aren't caught up in this
Mainly
trap.
because, of course, these micro-lenders, you're actually borrowing to repay within days, right? So if you've borrowed 200 bob, you're supposed to pay back within 48 hours or 72 hours.
which is unscrupulous,
Which
these
means
payday
that
loans.
at the end of the 72 hours, if you haven't repaid, your name already goes straight
Absolutely.
to the
So
CRB.
can you see what
extend
is
that.
unfair about it? I think the CBK has picked that up and realized. So extend that. We're now at 6 months. And also have a threshold. If something is below a certain amount, no, you can't register it with us. That way, when they're lending these 200 shillings and so on, they're careful because you can lend
No.
200 shillings
Actually,
to somebody.
the inverse happened. Initially, it was just the commercial banks, and now they said let's also include because
The loan apps and
commercial
fintechs,
banks
for
realize
example.
that there are people who are coming to borrow from us, but they also have serious debt elsewhere. So I'm looking at your papers and I'm thinking, oh, you look clean, but you're seriously in debt.
With Tala.
Yes, and all these other apps. So you have debt with the SACCO, you have debt with, like, you belong to a SACCO, you belong to a microfinance institution, you're borrowing from a mobile lender, and then you go to a commercial bank, and the commercial bank does not know any of these things. So everybody who lends now forwards that information to the CRB, so any lender can see where else are you tied.
Of course, there's also the data protection. I don't know how that would work, but that's also questionable as to whether other lenders should be able to see where else I'm borrowing. I think perhaps maybe they should notify you that they will be seeing where else you're borrowing.
There's basic. I think there's basic information, not necessarily where else you're borrowing. It just
They
shows
do
that-
have it. If you talk to even your banker, all banks have that app that if they key in, they will be able to determine, and usually it's your ID. Your ID will give them access. Banks have that capacity. They will have access to whatever adverse borrowing you have. They will know. And they will tell you, you seem to have a problem with this and this and this and this bank.
It's important.
Go and sort it out. They do have that information.
And it's important to protect the lender and to protect you as well, because, like you're saying, borrow from Peter to go pay Paul, and then you.
But you see, it
realize-
boils down to what I was saying, that there's this thing, when you talk about financial management, there's what you call financial discipline. Simply saying that if I have borrowed, then I need to understand that I have an obligation to pay.
return it, right.
Okay? Just take it socially. How often do you have situations where people behave as though you never lent them money?
They don't know who you are.
And so they behave as though they have no need to pay something which in their mind they didn't borrow. Some even take offense. Some will even tell you, but that is very little money. And you're wondering, goodness, this person's even deciding for me what I should complain about.
What's your problem, CT?
Yes,
It's just
yes.
10,000.
Yes, what's your problem?
I'm gonna pay
Yes.
10,000. You know what?
Yes,
The other day I was just flying down to Riyadh. I'm gonna pay you 10,000.
yes,
They're showing you that they are continuing with their life.
yes.
but
And a
10,000
year has
should
gone
be-
by, but yes.
10,000, it should be nothing to you. The other thing that I was actually raising, and let's come back and talk about that. The positive, if you've been a good person, it should impact positively as well on your borrowing.
I.e. your interest rates
i.e.
should
your
be
interest
lower.
rates, yes. And also how quickly you should be able to access a loan. I mean, some of those, maybe a good credit rating should also go into reducing the amount of collateral that you have to pay, right?
In terms of reducing the interest rate, that cost would be passed on to people with worse credit, so their interest rates would go up. That would be my worry. The bank would still have to earn money. So in reducing your interest rates, there's a cost to the bank, and that would be passed on to people with worse credit rating than you. It wouldn't be fair.
Unscrupulous banks. at that. 12 minutes to 9 o'clock. This is the situation room 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. You can call in and contribute to this conversation. We know there are 400,000 loans that have been listed with the CRB for amounts less than 200 shillings. 2.7 million people who have defaulted as of July this year. And of course, what does this mean to our financial literacy, to our lending sector, to our financial sector? Good morning.
96.1 Spice FM. Kisi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Should we make it a responsibility of the lender to conduct financial literacy programs?
If the lender hopes to have a client who actually understands and by understanding can act responsibly in repaying, they need to consider it seriously. They need to. It's like, why do you think, for instance, that does the government involve itself in public participation in the things that it offers? Many people do not know this, but they do. Like you'll find agencies like the NHIF, NSSF holding meetings in communities to explain what it is they do and why they do it and how they do it. Why? Because they want the public to actually understand.
To understand it.
Yes, so when you become part and parcel of it, you understand what it's all about.
Let's go to the phone lines. Robbie is calling from Nairobi. Good morning, Robbie.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
I wanted to contribute on that.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, you see the way there's someone who had talked about the small information that is written.
We lost her. I think she's talking about the small print.
In terms and conditions.
The terms and conditions
I think
apply.
in the same way cigarettes on their packets, they now must sort of be more informative, and they've been asked to put pictures and images actually of the consequences of smoking. Similarly with alcohol companies, when they advertise, they also have to put a message there about drinking responsibly and so on. Maybe some of these financial institutions should be forced to highlight the potential pitfalls of borrowing short-term at high interest rates and so on. Because I think this actually is, it takes more of a psychological toil on the individuals than, let's say, smoking and so on. You find a lot of youngsters committing suicide because of they're
heavily in debt.
And this comes about as a result of these fintech companies and so on. So perhaps not just as CSR, but perhaps by law, forget financial literacy and understanding, how much they have to pay and what it is per month as interest. Because they're also very mischievous in terms of when they tell you the interest rate. They put APR. A lot of people don't understand that what that breaks down to per month is actually quite a lot, compound interest and simple interest and that sort of thing. But they should go further and actually tell people what the implications of over-borrowing are, that people, have killed themselves. If on cigarette packets you see pictures of people with lung cancer, you see the actual lungs, perhaps these financial institutions should be forced to do the same in informing the public.
Indeed. 0719-012-600. That's the number to call in. Robbie, you can call back. 0719-012-600 is the number to call. You're looking at me, City, like you. There's something that's deep in your thought and you're thinking, yes, let's go there. Of course, you also know that one of the things about CRB is one of the requirements for many people now when you're going to seek employment is you've got to prove, first of all, what's your CRB rating? Have you been listed on CRB? Do you have HELB clearance? Do you have a certificate of good conduct? So all these actually do impact on your ability as well to get a new job. Just because you have been rated on CRB.
Which is why I was saying it seems to be all punitive more than trying to help or trying to really regulate anything.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the way it should be looked at. I think if we're going to talk about regulatory, then it should actually be regulatory. It shouldn't be something that we're going to punish you for what you've done or not done.
Hey, Robbie.
Hi. Yes, I was talking about the terms and conditions.
Yes.
You find that the bank has provided those information in small letters, and maybe the clients don't get enough time to read them. They just tell them to sign.
Yep.
by explaining what is written there.
Mm-hmm.
So you might find that maybe the rate that they're giving out is 20%,
Yep.
but they tell the client that it's maybe 17%.
Mm-hmm.
So you see the client will end up borrowing the amount, knowing that he's paying at 17%, but in actual sense, they're paying at 20%.
All right. Good points.
Yeah,
about
and
disclosure.
again-
Yes.
Maybe the duration, maybe a bank has a limit of repaying the loan maybe at a maximum of, let's say, 6 years.
Yep.
But you see, maybe the salesperson will pressure the client to pay at maybe 5 years. Maybe he doesn't have that capability of paying that huge amount,
Yep.
according maybe to the business that they are running.
Thank
So
you.
that presses the client to repay the loan.
Thank you, Robbie. Donix, good morning.
Good morning, Eric.
How are you doing? How's Mombasa?
Mombasa, it's fine. I'm okay.
Yeah. What do you have to say about the CRBs and lending?
I have an experience.
Yep.
Yes, last year, at the beginning of this year, around January, I think I took a loan with, I can't quite remember the lender. And it happened that around that time I was going through some difficulties and I defaulted. I defaulted for, it was around the third month.
Mm-hmm.
Then on the third month, I received a call from the lenders. One of the person who was trying to follow up on the loan.
Mm-hmm.
This guy called me and told me, your loan is due today, and I'm calling you to remind you that you're supposed to pay up by COB this day. Yeah? Failure to which we're going to list you on CRB. Then I told this guy, the purpose for you calling is for us to renegotiate. And I asked him to give me a leeway of 2 weeks, because in the next 2 weeks I was expecting some money and I was going to be able to pay. This guy was very adamant, and he said that if I fail to pay my loan by the end of business, that very day, I was going to be listed.
Right.
And true to his word, by
were
the end
listed.
of that day, I was listed. Then I got so mad. So by the end of 2 weeks, I received the money, and then I was like, why should I pay? And I'm already listed in the CRB. Yeah, you get. So finally, I ended up paying the loan. So maybe after maybe another 3 weeks, then I paid up the loan anyway. But I have not cleared my CRB rating. So months down the line, at around August, I think I tried to borrow with, I think, was it I don't know if it's Okajazi or
One of the other lenders, yes.
Yes, and I was sent a message telling me that Donex, you're not able to borrow because of your CRB rating. So I wonder, why are these credit lenders able to call you and then still list you, even though when they call, they're supposed to make you renegotiate the terms? Maybe you're going through some rough patch, and you're just trying to ask for additional, maybe 1 or 2 weeks.
They should hear you more, basically. That's what you're saying, Donix.
Yes, they should hear you more, because I was listed, and they had called me. And the purpose for anybody to call you is to try and find out why.
What's wrong? Why aren't you repaying? Thank you, Donix.
Yes.
Let me go to Roiro and hear from Charles Joroge. Good morning, Charles.
Good morning. Fairly very good debate. Now, mine are just 2 quick points. One is that lending and loans are not bad. In fact, you define a loan as an advance on savings. You know, it's like you getting that money in advance, which you'd have worked so hard, frankly, to do what is it that you anticipated to do. Now, the tragedy is the character of Kenyans, I included. We want money all the time, but we don't want to pay it back all the time. And to me, that's where the tragedy comes in.
Right.
Having said that, I think the lender also has a responsibility to do the appraisal, to understand the customer and the ability of that customer to pay that particular loan. And I think that's where the digital lenders are missing the point. The way they do the analytics sometimes leaves a lot of gaps, in the process of lending.
Right.
But I think, let us not condemn the lender, really, because who goes to the lender?
It's the borrower.
In many instances, it is the borrower who goes there. So at the same time as we condemn the lender, I think the borrower also needs to be condemned
At the same
for that
time.
having huge appetite.
Thank you, Charles.
And then they don't invest, wisely, once they get this money.
Yeah,
And I think
thank you,
that's
Charles.
the challenge in the target days.
Thank you. Let's hear from Duncan in Nairobi. Good morning, Duncan.
Good morning. How are you?
We're fine, thank you.
Good morning.
Good. Good. I like the conversation this morning,
Yes.
and I think one of the things we are missing out is actually the responsibility of the borrower, vis-a-vis also the culture that we have as Kenyans in repaying. And I think if we sort that out, we sort of will have sorted a very big peg that is missing. You rightly mentioned that we have people who would borrow, even just from friends. But for me, the nexus between bad borrowing is what we spend money on when we actually borrow from this thing.
Exactly.
If you look at what people are paying for when you have quick access to quick money, you're doing a party over the weekend, so there's very little thought into, so that you find yourself in debt, but also
That you can't manage.
I used to work for a microfinance organization a while back.
Yep.
And you would lend like 20 Gs, 30 Gs, and after you give someone 20 Gs, they first of all want to call you, this call as Mwalimu, come and let's have nyama choma. They
Anataka kurudisha mkono bwana Duncan. Oh, we lost Duncan. Well, somebody calls you to say, come, let's have something because I've gotten a loan today. It's coming up to 9 o'clock. Remember, you can still call in 0719-012-600 and also contribute on our social media handles, Twitter and Facebook. Good morning.
Spice up your life.
Well, yeah, so we still have that situation around Sultan Hamoud. But apart from that, nothing else happening in terms of traffic today. And looking at the roads have been actually doing very well, except for now what the calls are is for the repair of certain roads in different parts of the city. And those have come up very clearly, all the way from Syokimau to Ongata Rongai, and then going well into Feather and places like that. So the calls now are for the roads to be fixed. Even when there's no traffic, you still have to go quite slowly. So yes, getting good vibes for traffic today and nothing out of the ordinary, and actually very, very short timings for people to get where they're going. It's going to be like this for the next couple of days, I'm sure, going into the festive season. Anything out of the ordinary that you do see, please do let us know. 0719-012-600. It's the number to call.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Jerry Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down.
2 minutes after 9 o'clock, phone lines are open. 0719-012-600.
The only way
Maureen,
to start
good morning.
your day.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Maureen, and I wanted to contribute to today's discussion. So what happened is that I needed a loan some years back, and I went and approached my bank, and they were okay with it. Then I lost my job at some point, and we went through a financial status with my husband and everything.
Yeah.
So we went to the bank. We're like, okay, fine. We still have one salary or one income. So what we can do is that instead of me defaulting, can we reduce on the amount of monthly payment?
Right.
And the bank refused. They totally refused. So
What was their justification for that?
they can't. Apparently, unless you make a top up, they were willing to give me an extra loan so that they can.
So you can renegotiate the terms.
Then we can renegotiate the term, and I'm like, boss, I don't already have a job, and I do not want to default because I know we'll figure it out. I'll get another job, and I'll come back and repay.
Yep.
And they refused. So these banks are just here to milk us out, and they don't really care about your welfare.
No, they don't.
Was it
They really do.
Was it a bank policy, or are you dealing with an ignorant banker?
Actually, it's one of the top banks here in Nairobi. And they refused completely. And I was in shock. I was like, how are you willing to give someone who's already not having an income? You want to make me to take more money, to sink me into more debt, and I've come to your office to renegotiate my terms.
And they're not listening to you any further. They're not willing to listen to you any further.
So anyway, I ended up being listed.
Paul Sana, Maureen.
I was listed, and eventually I got another job. I approached the same bank. I was like, you know what? I'm here. I want to pay my loan. Clear me. I went and just cleared with CRB.
Yep.
And I'm back, but I had to move the bank. I was like, you can't treat people like this. I was willing to pay a bit less, my monthly repayment,
Yep.
and you refused.
They lost a customer. Thank you, Maureen, for your call. Otieno, good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Yes. Now, I'm listed with the CRB as a defaulter.
200 bob or
And
below?
Actually, what happened is,
Yep.
there's a time my phone lost network. And I had to switch SIM cards.
Uh-huh.
So by the time I got another SIM card, I had a loan. 5,000 from Mshwari and 15,000 from KCB. And I didn't borrow any money. No, I started getting messages that I owe 15,000 to KCB.
Just because of a new SIM card?
Well, actually, it's a
Identity
scam. It was
fraud,
definitely
isn't
a
it?
scam that I think is quite popular now. That happens where people,
Yeah.
you switch
So
your
I'm
card,
supposed
and somebody
to
uses
pay
your
money.
card to get a loan.
I'm supposed to pay money that I didn't
That you
use.
didn't
So
borrow. Yeah.
Yep.
I completely refused to pay. So I'm listed. I don't borrow money. So what happens to people in my situation?
It's a case of
They should
identity fraud, I think, and perhaps you should.
Did you report that to the police?
Yeah.
No, I didn't report it.
I think that would have been that would have been important to do.
So, Ndu, you're saying this is a common scam in the
Oh,
country?
it happens. I mean, and I think it's one of the things that, you have the mobile operators asking people to be quite vigilant about, especially when somebody calls you asking you to switch your card or you have to get a new card kind of thing, switch your PIN. And this is what they actually are doing.
Do you remember something
with
like that? Or, someone had called you claiming to be from one of the mobile operators and telling you...
or
there's
even at
something
the
about
point
your
of SIM swap. If you went to an agent of one of these mobile operators, it's possible that happened there. So at the point where your SIM was being swapped, somebody then had access to your PIN, etc., and then took a loan
immediately
on your old SIM immediately before they swapped the details to the new one. It's quite rampant, unfortunately.
Yeah, that is what happened to me. But nobody called me. My network just went.
Right.
Your
that's
phone
the
just
thing.
lost a network.
Yeah.
Paul Lesano Otieno. I think you should report that to the police.
Maybe I should.
No, you should. Not maybe. You should.
I'm already listed.
Yeah, pay back that as well.
No, don't. That's not fair. No,
they'll
if you
tell
report it to the police, you can then approach
Then
these
go
lenders and
to
explain
the
what
lenders
happened.
and tell them what happened, of course, and then follow it up from that point.
Okay, thank you.
Asante sana,
thank
Otieno.
you.
0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. A lot of these cases, you hear people saying, I have found myself being listed on the CRB. In fact, I think I remember Peter Kenneth claiming that he had also been listed on the CRB for borrowing. Man is a principal in a bank.
From Nyeri. Who did he borrow from?
Man is a principal in a bank. He's told he owes someone. Let's have some more callers. Alan is calling from Nairobi. Good morning, Alan.
Good morning.
Good morning. What's your experience?
Yeah, not really my experience. My own view about the CRB guys.
Yes.
you know, when we license them, I think they're just to Metropole and somebody else. And I'm hearing that they're trying to, right now they're trying to license a third one. But if you noticed, there was an exchange between the Standard Group and Metropole. When Metropole did not pay the Standard Group, and we were asking who is going to list the lister. Now the point is, these things were created to help price risk, to help banks price risk, and to deal with this thing that what Georgie called information asymmetry. And the idea was to make it easier for banks to know that CT is a good payer, so I'm going to give him a lower interest rate than Latif.
Yes.
They were supposed to give positive information.
Yeah.
But they have turned them into prefects and just hurting people. They just give negative information. Today, even if you want to be a politician, you go to a CRB. That is not what they were supposed to be. They were supposed to be giving positive information. Today, 10 years later, our CRBs don't give positive information. They just give negative to punish people.
Actually,
they're supposed to give.
Actually, Alan, they do. To be fair, they do. They actually do receive all that. They have the information. So it's upon the lender to give. If you have a positive credit rating, it's because you have positive information.
No, Latif, I beg to disagree. As we speak today, CRBs don't provide positive information from banks. They just provide negative information for nyongering people. I think we need to change the whole framework so that CRBs can do what they're supposed to do, which is to help banks price so that interest rates can go down. That was the reason, if you read the Act or even if you read the legal framework. That's my 10 cents.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yeah, well, he's talking about that positive rating, and positive rating should work to the advantage of those who are not defaulters.
Well, I mean, that's clear. And I think that just from what people have said, it's very clear that some kind of regulation is required in terms of what happens around this, in terms of, what you borrow and what the agreement is or what the understanding is from the very beginning of what could happen in the event that you don't pay. Yeah, sure, people feel that, okay, yeah, might all be listed. But what does that actually mean? And in terms of negotiations, what can you actually do? Because if you look at the numbers, then it's quite telling of what the diagnosis is financially for a lot of people in this country, debt-wise and otherwise, in terms of what you can borrow, in terms of what can I negotiate. And it seems that a lot of the institutions don't want you to know how far you can go. And I think it must be the opposite.
I think the CRB picks up the vibes from the banks. Because our banks are not generally customer friendly.
They're not your friend, really, are
they? Not really.
Mm.
They are your friend if they think you qualify to borrow money. At that point, they will be your friend. But they are usually not your friend to explain to you, for instance, that even as you're borrowing the money, these are the pitfalls, and should this happen, this is what you can do. But even more so, there will be promises they make. For instance, if you open a certain account, they'll tell you, this account has X benefits. Christ will come back before you see those benefits.
If you actually get to see the benefits.
Yes. And I think it's part of what you've heard me say on this show on many occasions, the impunity that banks and bankers have, feeling they can actually make their own rules and get away with it. And they seem to have. Now that we even have a situation where the interest cap went wherever it went.
Field day coming.
Yeah.
The history of actually getting these CRBs, like I said, it's this journey started in the 80s into the 90s, and those who were pushing for the CRBs to be regulated, of course, then they were getting a lot of pushback from the banks, and the banks were pushing back because of this, because they knew that if we start talking about credit rating, then we'll get to a point where the conversation will be, so if I have a positive credit rating, what benefits do I enjoy from you? Exactly. And so far, of course, the way they've managed to do, the bankers and the lenders as a whole, is to try and just use the credit reference bureaus to their advantage.
Yes.
You have not repaid in time, then I'm going to report you to CRB. In fact, they even tell you, I'm going to report you to CRB. This is like the guy who is the prefect. I'm going to make sure that tutakushughulikia.
Yeah,
this is tutakushughulikia.
It runs through everywhere, man.
This one, leave him to me.
We'll give him the gift of sight.
I'll deal
Atatuana.
I'll deal with him. Conversation continues on our social media platforms as always. Spice FM KE on Facebook. Our Twitter handle is at Spice FM KE. Our individual handles at Eric Latif, at CT Muga, at Nyeri Thorn, at Nduoko. 13 minutes after 9 o'clock. Good morning.
96.1 Spice FM. Kisi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. 24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
The Kenyan summer is right around the corner, and Blankets and Wine is here to celebrate it with not one, but two editions. Join us on December 22nd and toast to the year that was with reggae phenomenon Coffee. Check it out, Coffee come in like a rapture, and everybody get captured. South African house finest Sunel, Kenyan sensation Fena, Soul Generation, and many more. Then start the new year with our big vibe on January 5th with Grammy-nominated superstar Goldlink. Right. Feeling like a brand new me and an entourage. Kenya's finest Blinky Bill, Karun, and lots more artists. Season passes at 3,500 and advance tickets at 3,000 per show. Available on blanketsandwine.com. Both events at Ngong Racecourse from noon onwards in partnership with Timeless Events and Occasions, Parapet Cleaning, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, Securix, the Nairobi Flea Market, Boomplay, and Vibes Radio. Nobody can stop reggae. We are on ting. Link up and toast with us.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Biggest conversation broadcasting from Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi, worldwide on www.spicefm.co.ke. Americ Latif, we have Nduoko, CT Muga, and Nyeri Thorn.
Yes, we have me, and today I want to talk about government communications and what their actual roles and responsibilities are. I criticized the government earlier for not communicating particularly well on their performance, and this came out with Uhuru himself having said it, that people are not realizing what we've achieved. Instead, we're politicking. Government also has a role not just to communicate its performance, but to educate its people. And when I say educate, not provide school and education, but actually educate them, because if you remember, one of government's primary roles is to promote general welfare. So in doing so, they must protect and provide. And it's in the protection that they need to inform people on a number of issues. I want to deal with quite a few of these. I'm looking at an article here, sadly, in the Standard, whereby 2 schoolgirls were killed by a car whilst crossing the road. Now, even down to crossing the road, this is the job of the government to teach people how to cross the road. I remember growing up, there was look right, look left, look right again, or was it the other way around? But there was actually a little sort of rhyme that you used to remember this, and this was done by the government. Similarly, with Christmas coming up, the dangers of over drinking. Of course, I've seen a few things on TV with regards to drink driving, but what about actual overindulgence? And then generally, not even just during the festive season, the dangers with drinking, the dangers with smoking. What is the government doing in informing its people on sort of the dangers of this, especially given that we're now looking at taking a more preventative approach to medicine and healthcare as opposed to curative? The government simply does not do enough to educate its people. Unless it's in the run-up to an election, then you will see a lot of education on, or promises rather, on what these politicians can do. Other than that, we do have NGOs that try and fill in this vacuum. I think you even see them going around telling people how to wash their hands so as to avoid certain diseases. This is the role of the government, and it is a primary role. I think it has been left out, and a lot is actually politicking. That's what the government has been doing in terms of communication, and now they're suffering the consequences, not just of not having communicated their performance, but also we see a lot of them not having upheld the general welfare of people through basic communication.
I think this communication, sometimes when we think about it, when we look at it, we just sometimes want to think that it's got to be an announcement in the newspaper or something, must be gazetted, an advert, and say, okay, well, this is happening, and then there are more to come that come on TV. But I think it is important to have this kind of communication entrenched as part of the system, so that people are learning, even from a very young age. I can't forget the importance that CT talked about during, what was it? No, it was actually the census, and said, look, when you have something like this being taught at a primary school level, so that people don't just know that the census is coming, but they're also then taught the elements of it, for example, and then are able to know what it really means. So from a very young age, they have gotten that information in. So then later, when something comes about, then they're able to do something with it. So in the event that when the communication is not clear, they already have a background in terms of information, and then they can now ask information-based questions. So I think the government communication, I think we have to, it is very important that it moves away from kind of like podium announcements or television announcements and newspaper adverts and kind of thing. It's got to be entrenched in the system. And so then they have to pull in all kinds of sectors. They have to pull in education. They have to pull in planning. They have to pull in, information at the county level and kinds of things, because it has to be, because once you do not give the information, what you do then is that you prime the ground for people to speculate. And most times people are going to speculate in a negative manner. Unfortunately, people will come up with their own theories about what could actually be. For example, we heard the sentiments of the president yesterday that people are not talking. People are saying that we've not done anything. And regardless of how many times we want to take a punch at the government, we know that they have done some things, but they're just not telling people about it. We see announcements and we see traffic jams when the president is going somewhere to launch this, that, or the other thing, and that's it. We're not going to hear anything else about it in terms of then what has happened. We had people asking questions yesterday. Okay, SGR launch what? It had already been launched. What are we talking about? But this was a different sector. This was something that was going to affect government business, country business in a different way. But who knew about it? You know? So it's necessary for it to be entrenched a lot deeper than what it actually is.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be, as you say, through advertising. In the West, for instance, in the UK with the BBC, which is state-owned or it's funded by the taxpayer, you do pay a TV license. And so the BBC doesn't take adverts. That way it's impartial in terms of its...
Commercially.
Yes, so they can actually criticize even... commercial institutions because they're not relying on advertising. We don't quite have that here. But with such a platform, you find the government does deal with social issues through even infotainment. So through things like EastEnders, certain issues will be dealt with. So you're watching it for the entertainment factor, but you'll find maybe homosexuality is being dealt with, or you'll find, I remember one character when I was growing up and watching EastEnders, one character had AIDS and a lot of prominence was placed on him, and it was to teach people about AIDS. You know, he was taking his medicine, he was open about his status, and so he was not engaging in multiple partners and so on. And this was a message that was reverberating to the communities and to people without them having to dissect it too far, because they had made it realistic. There was very little resistance because you're already engaged in the program. So these are ways in which the government can educate people, and we don't have enough of this. Although having said that, when you do watch some of the vernacular stations, you do see a more educational approach to some of their programming. For instance, on Inoro or Kameme, there'll always be something about, sort of enterprising farming and buying plots and how you can make money off that.
And health.
But that is still not, and health as well, it's still not government driven.
It's not government
which
driven,
is the government's role. And they have so many opportunities instead. And I don't want to criticize this task force that was put together to find out how they can build trust and confidence in government. And what they've come out with is this free press, this newspaper. And I bet all it will do is politicking and then, yes, a platform for government communications. But there will be resistance to that. There's other more subtle ways that you can engage people's hearts and minds as they watch programs, and you can inject subtle messaging that can help uphold the welfare of the people, that will teach people. The other day we were talking about people throwing rubbish out of a moving car, and we said they just don't know. If you remember growing up, there was a gentleman called, I think it was Mambo Botella, and every Sunday he had a program, and it would teach a lot. It would say, "Je, hiyo ni ungwana." Is that manners, or is that ungwana means manners? I think.
I don't know.
CT,
broadly speaking.
Ungwana is manners.
Broadly speaking. It's,
Ungwana is actually good manners.
Good manners. Okay.
Yes, the Jehu ni Ungwana.
Jehu ni Ungwana.
Yes, and he would. Yes,
he would point out.
He would. It was based on mannerisms or things that people did in the public
social
space.
etiquette and
That
was it.
Yes, and he would point out, this is what happened. Give a story behind it, and
it
then
was
ask,
entertaining and somewhat
but
humorous.
It was also very, very informative.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But you see that now came from a private, clearly a private entity, and filling a gap.
It wasn't private.
KBC.
It's KBC.
Oh, it was KBC?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Government.
But, yeah.
It was government,
right.
yeah.
So such things like that actually made sense, and people remember it to this day. And it was kind of entrenched in the way then you would think, because then it would resonate with you that somebody was sending out a message on then how we needed to act or how then you needed to carry out ourselves. And I think such a thing is definitely important. But you can't just have one department, because unfortunately when we are sharing information, when the government is sharing information, most times it comes from a reactive stance. When something has happened and then we're sharing information, or the census is imminent, we must tell people. Oh, Huduma number is imminent, we must tell people. Oh, 1,000 shilling note being phased out, we must tell people. As opposed to entrenching it so that people understand continuously over time, this is actually what is going on.
I think on this one,
the
I don't want to
SGR is being the expressway, this is actually what will happen, you know? So that people are not then slapped with surprise or wonder and then start to ask questions. And then when that gap is not filled with the information, again, leaving room for speculation.
Take, for instance,
let's look
Mombasa
at how the government actually also operates as well. I don't want to be so overly critical on the government when it comes to this. So, looking at the structures of government, so there's the national government and going all the way down with the structures of the national government to the chief and the headman. And they are used as instruments of dissemination of information on a constant and regular basis. So, for instance, let's say there's an expected infestation of fall armyworms, and those are the officers that will go on the ground and tell people this is expected to happen, and this is how you need to prepare yourselves and to react to it. It actually happens. Even the ones that we're talking about, the awareness on washing hands and safe way of washing hands, you will find that yes, it's a private company led, but they have got the support of the Ministry of Health, for instance. So they've gone to the Ministry of Health.
It's an NGO working in
or even a
with
private
the Ministry
company, right? So you'll find
Protex or
whoever, they're actually working with the Ministry of Health. So the Ministry of Health gives them the information. This is the information that is a proper way of disseminating the information. Now use your influence as well, because you have contact and touch points with the audience to educate the people.
What I'm saying is a lot more needs to be done. People don't know how to cross a road in Kenya, in that if you're at a junction and
it's
you're
taught in school.
Well, it needs to be retaught to adults, because people, if you can be at a junction and you're about to come into another road and people cross in front of you, whereas ordinarily you should go behind the car. Now that's very basic. If you're reversing, they go behind you for some reason, whereas when you're going forward, they go in front of you. It can be taught again. I've given the example of crossing the road, and you see it here. Even for policy uptake, it's all well and good for government to design policy. So for instance, on Mombasa Road, they've designed bridges, cross bridges, or what are they called? Walkovers for people to cross the road. Footbridges. People will still cross the road just below the footbridge, by the way. So it's not even a matter of inconvenience or distance,
education
but
is needed
just
there?
below. I think if you showed people perhaps the repercussions and how many people die on this Mombasa Road crossing the road. So it's not just to teach people, but it's also for people to absorb the policy. So for policy uptake, you can't just design policy and then leave it there. Yes, it can be citizen-centered. But for them to take it up, you need to engage them and educate them. Now, there's so much education that can be. We've been in the station when we've heard somebody has been hit on Mombasa Road.
Yep.
Now, there is enough
and you've also
footbridges.
seen on the zebra crossings on this Mombasa Road, you see they're manned. And those are government officials. They're actually there. They hold the, what's it called, the lollipop.
Placard. Yeah.
They hold the lollipop and they stop traffic, let the people cross. At the footbridges, you'll find sometimes the Kanjo askaris or police officers arresting those who are trying to cross under the footbridge. Sometimes it's also the people's attitude. If you look at a government campaign, for instance, GOK delivers. What's the immediate reaction to that? Of that propaganda. What is this? GOK delivers what? It hasn't delivered anything. The government trying to communicate about we have done this SGR and these are the benefits that we expect to see with SGR, not just today but in the future.
So there is
Immediate reaction to
resistance
that
from the
is
populace, which is
resistance.
expected. But how come other countries are getting it right? If you go to the West, you're not going to find somebody crossing the motorway unless they're trying to kill themselves, crossing the motorway and there's a footbridge. They'll use the footbridge.
Because
now,
the
what's
people
so different
themselves-
about them? What's
the
so different
people-
about those people?
Those people are different.
No, they have been socialized and conditioned in a certain way, and government has
behave
a
in a
role
certain
in
way.
socializing us. It is their role. That's why I looked at the BBI and they talk
and
about
depending on what way you want to use, because if you look at Singapore, nobody is throwing trash
You
on
can't
the
even
street.
chew gum.
In
because you
Rwanda-
will be whipped.
In
And I'm not
Rwanda-
no, seriously, in Singapore,
You'll be whipped by the authorities.
Yes, the equivalent of the city
So it's
council
something- it's a
askaris
construct.
will
It's been
whip
created.
people. So the streets of Singapore are spotless because people just don't want to be whipped.
And
so
it's an
again, they've been
attitude that has
socialized,
been
conditioned to
created.
realize we shouldn't do this.
Socialization, which is what the government needs to do with us. There's a lot. I mean, why are people littering? The government can actually do a campaign, a sustained campaign over a year. Nobody will ever litter. There's a campaign that was done on me when I was growing up on recycling. And now I feel the need to recycle. It's inherent in me to want to recycle. There's a sense of guilt when I don't recycle. That was conditioning. I never used to recycle.
People were taught.
So we can do this.
See, it happened when you were young, and you grew
No,
up
when I
with
say
it.
young, when I was in the
Younger,
UK, so
right.
maybe in my 20s. I
Yes,
was a
and
grown up
you grew
still.
up with it.
Yeah.
I am grown up.
People are still taught those things, how to cross the road. You're told there's a lot of sensitization on how to cross the road for people who are, of course,
You're
near
taught this at
more
school,
trouble areas.
how to cross the road?
School, yes, it's among the
At
basics.
what age?
Look left, look right,
Look left
again, cross. Is it the other way around? Right, left, then right again.
You know, a lot of these things, if you want to socialize someone, you have to start when they're at a young age. And
Yes.
again, there is nothing wrong in making sure that this is part of the education system so that going to school enables someone, because for change to make sense, it has to be generational.
Yes.
So you start with a school program that teaches people this thing at an early age.
When they're still being socialized.
Yes.
Yeah.
When they get to secondary school, once again, they'll be reminded. By the time they're adults, it's something they know. But if you want to start from the point of view that they're already adults, they're already used to littering.
They're already gone.
They're already used to crossing the road when they like, and also peeing wherever they like.
But I'm saying
They're already
these
formed-
adults
already
that we
formed in
have
their
today
ways.
were taught not to litter when they were young.
Whom?
The adults that we have today, the adult that
Were
you saw
they?
throwing litter out of a moving vehicle the other day, that person, if they went to school in this country, they were taught.
At
They
school,
were
in a
taught-
classroom
yes,
or in the
a
lesson?
classroom. Littering is, those are things that are taught in school.
Mhm.
Littering is bad, insulting, how to cross the road. These things are taught. We are basically socialized.
Actually,
at that
when I
stage.
said taught,
then we go back home, you find your adult who was taught, but they decided impunity. What's going to happen to me?
No. I
It
think there's no
creeps in.
shame in littering. It's not necessarily impunity.
There actually is no shame. People
There's
don't
no
don't
shame.
consider it a problem.
Yeah.
You see, Eric, if a child is taught something, one of the things you will know they've been taught is called they'll regurgitate it for you. They'll say, teacher said.
Yes.
And then they'll tell you what teacher said. And they will argue with you and tell you that, no, we don't agree because the teacher said this.
Yes.
Now, the adults are the ones who may deconstruct that.
And that's what happens.
Yes.
Well, not everything can be taught. Some issues are evolving and some are new. They occur.
Everything can be taught in Nyeri.
Not at
Everything.
school. No, what I mean
it
is
may
not
not
at
be
school.
formal,
Not
but
at school.
everything is taught.
Yes, I'm talking about at school, in that there will be
You
issues
didn't
that
say
come
so.
up. I was coming to that.
No,
CG,
you
we had
were
an
not.
interrupt. I was. How do you know what I was coming?
Because I know how you
no,
speak.
No, you don't.
I know exactly how you speak.
Look, shut up.
Yes.
I meant at school. I meant not everything can be taught at school because some situations are not static and they're evolving and they might happen. Sort of HIV came out maybe after people had left school in the 80s. So it's an issue that arises later on in your lifetime and so on. So the government does have a duty, of course, to communicate. Let's take smoking, for instance, which causes cancer and so on. And we've had a lot of discussions about cancer recently. It's come to the fore. The prevalence of cancer, of course, is there. But we're not seeing the government asking people not to smoke. We're not. Other than the labeling on the packaging, which you can easily ignore as a smoker because you discount the future, you don't see sustained campaigns asking people not to smoke. I remember seeing one in the UK. Sorry, I keep using these examples, but because I felt the socialization there, only because there was a contrast. I had lived in Kenya, I had lived in England, and I could feel the deliberate attempt by the government to get me to think in a certain way. And there was one advert, because of course cigarette smoking also clogs up your arteries. And it was a cigarette turning into fat that was clogging up arteries, and it was very graphic. And I remember it actually changed my mind, or it made me think twice about smoking. Now,
It was
you
done
don't
by
have
the ministry?
You don't have that. Yes, a lot of these are done by the ministries
No,
or
it
roads.
made her think twice. It made her stop.
It didn't make me stop, but it made me think twice about it. I'm sure it made a lot of people stop smoking. Similarly, road safety adverts in terms of driving slowly. There's really terrible adverts where you see a child being hit in a 30 mph area zone, and it makes you think twice about how you drive. Now, we don't have those sustained communication campaigns and programs in this country, and it would work brilliantly for the
Probably
government.
because we are a developing
No,
economy.
because
We
we're
don't have enough
politically
money.
charged, and we're otherwise
We don't have
engaged.
enough money. We don't have enough money to
No,
actually
this
pay
is-
adverts every day. You know, this is a sustained campaign.
What else don't we have, Eric?
Yeah. Let's
The
give some
people.
more reasons as to why we
right
just can't
now
act
we,
right.
we are running those campaigns. Actually, right now, if you watch TV, you'll find road safety campaigns by the government, by
Because it
NTSA
is Christmas.
Is it
on TV.
okay? But
Because it is
do we have it on the radio as well?
Yes, on the radio as well. You'll find it. It's
Because
27 minutes
Christmas
to
is
10
coming.
o'clock.
That's why.
Yes, exactly.
Should be all the time.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic.
Right, so Thika Road then coming from Safari Park is giving us some traffic this morning. Trying to get out through and coming to the Pangani underpass is not going to happen, unfortunately. And yet we see that coming to Ngara into the CBD is crazy traffic for everybody trying to get into the city now. Things have definitely changed since about an hour ago when things were actually smooth. So yes, this is where we are. It's a dump site as well as a traffic site because of the terminal that is right there for all vehicles coming from around the city, unfortunately. Apart from that, everything else seems to be flowing smoothly. Mombasa Road is a mess, unfortunately, right now. Coming out of Siokima, we have traffic backed up to Gateway Mall today. So yes, things have definitely changed. Try to get you out. Unfortunately, there are no alternative routes right now, so you're going to have to wait it out. 0719-012-600. If you see anything that we can help with, do let me know.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
About, of course, CRBs. Have I said it right? Credit Reference Bureaus,
Mm-hmm.
CRBs. We've got a gentleman here called Asekar, and he says, I live in Nairobi, woke up one morning with a message from Joppa Women Group in Kitui, and it said that your WEF, i.e. Women Enterprise Fund loan is in arrears of 57,175. Kindly pay. He says, now I have never been in any chama, and I've been to Kitui once for a burial and back.
And you've never borrowed on the Women Enterprise Fund.
Now, this is what I want to come back to. This is something the government could be educating people on. We've talked about, that's two callers or two people from the audience who are telling us about identity fraud. It's something the government can engage people on. Similarly, Kenyans going abroad and being mistreated. We've had so many stories from Middle East countries where Kenyans have gone there on the promise that they will receive XYZ, and instead their passports are taken away, they're tortured, and they live in deplorable conditions whereby they're begging Kenyans to get them out, and, you know, the embassies being pushed into trying to intervene and so on. Now, if there was programming in Kenya whereby even in Vionja Mahakamani or, you know, Vitimbi...
There's no N in Vioja.
What is it?
It's Vioja Mahakamani. The moment you say Vionja, you brought tasting into the conversation. Wonja.
That must be what accent is that? Kamba. I've got a little bit of Kamba blood.
No, it's Kenyan. Let's
All
carry
right.
on, yes.
All right.
Okay.
But if we could inject some of these lessons in our day-to-day watching of any series that we watch, any programming, things like borrowing, the fraud that we're looking at, things like Kenyans going abroad, as opposed to people relying on rumors and hearsay, which is what happens. A lot of Kenyans are so misinformed about so many things. You had the quail's egg saga where everybody and their grandmother were jumping onto this pyramid scheme, and the government could have easily educated people on how it works. networks simply by putting somebody who, for a program in
Putting
Kenya.
a quail and putting an egg and showing.
No, give me a program in Kenya other
this.
than Vionja Mahakamani. That one.
Vionja.
Give me another program. Vitimbi. What's that?
Inspector Mwala.
Inspector Mwala.
What are you saying? We had our own equivalent of Bitcoin, Nuru coin.
Nuru coin, absolutely. Just the other day, this is something the government could have educated people on, because remember, it is the government's job to protect us. Before even provision of services, they must protect us. And in doing so, uphold our welfare. These are very basic things the government can do to win our trust and confidence and create some sort of likability factor. We would like the government if we felt that they were informing us and they cared for us, as opposed to constantly feeding us this garbage on political rhetoric and the different fights that are going on.
And I think there are quite a number of government departments that are actually honestly, the best in the region, and quite arguably in sub-Saharan Africa. The other day we talked about the fact that there were ministers that came into the country from Nigeria to do benchmarking about the dairy industry in this country. And you look at organizations like KARI, the Kenya Agricultural Research Institute,
and I've been KEMRI, the Kenya Medical Research Institute.
I've been there, and I've seen some of the things that they're able to offer to the CT. I've seen some of the things that they're able to offer up to the citizenry of this country for free. World-class information that you're then able to take and then adapt to for yourself. Government budgets have been put into these programs, and they basically they're sitting there. Nobody is accessing them. The very few that access them have been able to do brilliant things in terms of business, brilliant things in terms of agriculture, from animal husbandry to poultry, across the board. But that information, that golden information is sitting there, and very few people are aware.
There's a bit of information that comes from Calro.
That's what I'm saying, a bit. But you can imagine the wealth of information that is there.
Small,
the wealth of information that is there for
they have a lot of information. In fact, our agricultural sector, you've been talking about.
Do we remember what,
statistics?
I want to hear this. Do we remember?
You must come to the end of this story. Carry on.
Carry on.
Because
I don't even know.
No.
He wants to say.
So
he
was.
Look, if
I was adding on to your conversation.
Exactly. He was enriching your conversation.
Okay, enrich some more.
Now
Carry on and enrich.
Carry on.
But you were going to say something.
I was going to say that when she mentioned Kari, remember we were talking about dry farming and flood farming. Meaning they develop seeds, they develop plants, they develop products that can withstand even the harshest of conditions.
The drought-resistant potato, for example. That was a big thing that I remember clearly coming into this country. And they've been able to give that information to people. But you can imagine how, we talked about drought in Ukambani for years. And individuals then now have access to this. And they offer lessons for free. For free, you can actually go and sit and have sessions in Kari, for example, to get this information. But people don't know.
Interesting.
Kari goes to the ground in those areas. For example, Calro has a huge tracts of land in Ukambani area for their research.
I sat with a lead scientific researcher. Her name is Stella Obanyi, and she said to me, "We wish that more Kenyans knew about this in terms of what we're able to offer."
Of course, and the point I was making is, so Calro, in their small way, in their small way, Calro tries to communicate. All those departments of government try to communicate. However, it's not enough. Yes,
imagine if there was a concerted effort.
It's not streamlined. It's not sustained.
If there was a concerted streamlined effort.
Eric, research organizations don't do very well with the communication.
Because that's not their core business.
No, they don't. They
it's not their core business. Yeah.
Calro has a communications department.
That doesn't mean they do well.
Yes, they all have a communication department, by the way.
Where they have one fella posting
the
tweets.
Calro communication department actually rolls out. You see these programs that we're talking about? They come up with programs. They do programs on video and audio. They go to these places. They hold meetings and trainings. Of course, the issue always comes back to how much budget are we going to allocate? This communication department. Communication is always the least funded in any
Which
organization.
means they don't have a good communications department. They might have good personnel, but if it's not funded, well funded, it's not a good communications department.
And the reason why it's being given a lower budget is because in terms of, on the totem pole, in terms of importance, communication is at the bottom. And things like...
Are we going to communicate or are we going to research?
So then you do all this research. It's fantastic, but then how are you giving it out in terms of letting people know?
It's a government department, right? They focus on their core mandate. And the way researchers, for instance, let the world know about what they're doing is they go for conferences. And at conferences, they present their findings. That's how they do it. Now, the media picks up on the findings if they have people who understand how to report such things, and they report it. Usually, that having been done, as far as they're concerned, they've done their bit. Now, if their work involves communities, they will have sessions where they actually call in the people they've been working with to explain to them the outcome of the findings and what they have done. And there's one general meeting where they even call the media. Then they will go back to the communities they worked with to now tell them, this thing that we did with you, this is the outcome. Yes, as far as they are concerned, but this is done with the full knowledge of the ministries involved, so and the counties involved and the sub-counties. So as far as they are concerned, job is done.
They've communicated.
They have. But the truth of the matter is this. Now, there are government agencies, for instance, let's in the health sector, there'll be NASCOP, who will pick up maybe such findings and put it to better use, frame it in such a way that it can become a national policy.
Yes.
Okay? Like, for instance, if you have a research on something, what you call test and treat, testing people, finding the results, and treating. The moment someone is HIV positive, you don't wait for their viral load to shoot up and to do some crazy things. No, you treat them immediately. It then becomes policy. That's why I'm saying it's then transferred to a different department, maybe within that same ministry, who has a bigger mandate to roll it out to a larger population.
Yes.
Now, in matters of things like, say, agriculture and the others, we determine the failure of these departments by the lack of information that we have because they haven't done what they were supposed to do.
And then you assume that they're doing nothing.
Yes, yet the researchers have done what they're supposed to do. And they keep doing what they're supposed to
do.
And
the communicators have done a bit of what they were supposed to do to the extent of their funding and their financing. This government has very many competing interests for the same allocation of budget. Right? So when it comes to, yes, it's the truth.
Okay.
When we talk about sustaining these campaigns throughout, so we're talking about campaigns on health, campaigns on agriculture.
It's much cheaper than trying to cure cancer. Actually preventing cancer through whether it's media or these
sharing of information, vital information,
is much cheaper than actually treating cancer and trying to cure it. Although there is something I will support the government for, surprisingly enough. There's the sector, the agriculture sector. They've tried to sex it up and get young people involved, and I think they've been quite successful. If you see some of their productions on that, Seeds of Change and so on, and this encouraged young people to get into agriculture, and I think that was a deliberate attempt by the government to try and make that sector seem, or to entice people to come into entice, they're similar words, people to come into the sector, and I think they've been successful there. If they could spread that across other sectors, so I've talked about, even social welfare and even how we should engage with each other. There's a lot missing. The church has been, I think, the custodian of our values and in turn of how we behave towards one another, how we interact in relationships. I think the government could actually set that agenda to a certain extent, and simply by showcasing how things should be done.
The church tries, it does, but where the church has failed, flopped monumentally, is in speaking out against injustices. Over the years. It's a core mandate of the church. They may not know so, but it is. Things go wrong and they keep quiet until the very last moment. And then the impression is given that they actually side with the government. Now, one of the reasons why there's been this separation between church and state is for that reason. The atrocities that were committed over the ages when the church and the state were considered to be pali-pali and buddy-buddy were profound. Now, if you are supposed to be the moral prefects and you are not seen to do that job, everything else that you do, even if it's wonderful, it will be tainted by that one thing that you were expected to perform, and yet you did not.
Phone lines are open 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. We're talking about government communication, and Jerry saying the government is not doing enough in terms of communication and spreading the information that it should. That is the responsibility of government to spread information on. And we want you to join in this conversation as well on our social media handles, Spice FM KE, Facebook at Spice FM KE, Twitter, and 0719 012 600. It's 13 minutes to 10 o'clock.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Unright. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Now, in realization that they don't have enough money to communicate, I think the government should now also think outside the box. And that is where
Who has said they don't have? I mean, you've just made that assumption. And
no, they actually don't have enough money.
Who has said they don't have enough money to communicate?
They're not allocating enough money to communication, just like they don't have enough money to allocate to any other
but
things.
Not because they don't have enough. Perhaps they don't place enough emphasis on it, and then they don't place any import on having good people in place to communicate for them. So perhaps it's the lack of awareness as to how important this is. Not that they don't have enough money.
They can
That's
actually
something
get
completely
creative
different.
and still save money by working with
But
private
why is this a
entities
monetary
on
thing?
this.
Who says the government doesn't have enough money
Communication
to communicate?
requires money.
Yes, but
It's a
who says it
monetary
doesn't
thing.
have?
Eric,
Who says it
let
doesn't
me
have
tell
enough
you, what
money?
doesn't require money?
Everything
Surely.
requires
But who
money.
says the government doesn't have enough money to communicate? Where did you get that from?
From the government.
They've said that.
How
they
much money- how
they
much-
communicated that.
How much money has
I
been
mean,
allocated
Eric,
to
of all the
That
things
part
that
they
cost the
communicated,
government,
perhaps.
I mean, if you told me health costs, health
say yes.
costs, education, yes. Where does communication come in?
What? In terms of
On
what?
the list of
is a
things that are expensive.
cost-saving exercise. I'll tell you
The
that.
things that we are talking about, you see, if you're talking about having sustained communication campaigns,
Yes.
that is a budgetary item.
Yes.
It's a budgetary
Yes.
item,
It
but
is
it is
a lot
a
of money.
cost-saving
Okay,
exercise.
like how much,
It
say,
is a-
for instance? I ask what I don't know.
I wouldn't know either.
CT, but the government has
But
not
it's a
said
lot
they
of
don't
money.
have enough money. They have not said that. What they're not doing is placing enough emphasis on communicating sort of health issues and preventative measures that can be taken. And we saw it in Moi's days. Would all be in tandem. If you remember Umomonyoko wa Udongo and those sort of campaigns.
Today's the day, isn't it, my dear?
Today is the day for bringing out these things, man.
Big
You guys
words.
have noticed as
Let's
well.
go to the
Big words.
Mumonyoko. Let's carry
How
on.
do you say
yes.
it? Umomonyoko.
Continue, my dear. don't mind, City.
No.
I said
This
it
is
right.
good.
It's good things, eh?
No, carry on.
Oh yeah.
Carry on.
But
We
correct
know-
me. Have I said it wrong?
We know what you're saying.
Right.
Carry on. Yes.
Anyway, yes, that. If you remember, that was an example of, I wouldn't call it civic education. With civic education, there's governance and political issues to that. It's a more social welfare and upholding of our welfare issue. That was an example of a very well communicated campaign and agenda where the whole country was in tandem and we were all out there to ensure that soil erosion wasn't happening.
Now
and
imagine-
people did their bit. And then we had
Imagine
Help
if you're
Age
doing
Kenya.
20 of those campaigns.
You could
at
do
the same
50
time.
of, you could do 100
At
of
the
them.
same time.
Eric, I don't know where you get this impression that the government doesn't have money to communicate. They do have money, they don't allocate it to communications. That
Because
is
they
the
don't
difference.
see the importance of it.
Absolutely.
That's
Now, what
why.
I'm trying to stress here is how important it is for both the government and us. It works, it's mutually beneficial. We will have trust and confidence in the government if they show us that they care about us. One way to show us they care about us is showing us that they have these campaigns where they're trying to uphold our social welfare and maintain it. So they're teaching us how to cross roads where there's a footpath and a footbridge and you don't want to cross on the main road. They're teaching us the sort of consequences of smoking or too much drinking, then you feel the government cares for you. And once the government cares for you, it creates that likability factor. So why they're not going about it this way, I don't know. That, along with performance communication, would sort out this issue where they've had to set up a task force in order to see how they can rebuild the trust and confidence deficit that's been created due to lack of communication. So for me, it's if the government was actually doing its job, which communication is part of, they wouldn't then need to communicate to people to try and build trust and confidence. Just tell us that, guys, look, don't smoke, it leads to XYZ. And it's a cost-saving exercise because if you look at the money we need to treat cancer and the consequences of smoking, let's say, it's a lot more than we would need to inform people of what the consequences of smoking are.
I think even when we had Colonel Oguna here, the government spokesman in the studio, I think this is one of the things that he did speak about in terms of a challenge that they have when it comes to communicating. He said, yes, actually, fault us on that in terms of the things that are that do happen, that we do in terms of initiatives that we've set up, communication has been actually one of the weak limbs in this, or one of the weak pegs in this. The
weakest link
in this vehicle, as it were, and. This is something that they have acknowledged. I hope now, after the acknowledgement of such, that something will actually be done, because they realize that, yes, we only seem to communicate when we're at crisis level, when we're at crisis point, or when the thing has already happened and it's blown up in our faces and we're trying to pick up the bits. And we're saying, no, that is what it is. It actually is a preventative tool. It allows you to see in advance of time. And we're not just necessarily talking about for bad things to happen, but we're also talking about that people can actually benefit. The nation, all 47 million people, can benefit by virtue of the fact that you're communicating something, can benefit, as well as, other things can be prevented.
So I want to put up a footbridge, and I want to communicate to people on how to use
not
a footbridge.
Using the other ones
right?
that are there.
So put up a footbridge, communicate to the people how to use the ones that are there. What do you want to do? New footbridge or communication about the ones that are there?
You said you want to put up one. Go ahead.
Yeah. Or communicate to the people, teach people about how to use the one that was there before.
But why are these two competing?
Because they're coming from the same past.
Can I ask
you
the question?
are getting money from the same pocket. The issue I'm raising about budgets.
I don't have a problem with all this. Can I ask a question?
Money is coming from the same exchequer, Jerry, unless you're telling me that money from communication comes in form of
to put up
mana.
a footbridge and to communicate. I don't know where you get this impression there's not enough money.
Footbridge. Is it over water or is it just over some...
Both. Over water and over land.
Then why don't you teach people how to swim?
CT stop.
Same thing.
Eric, there's this fallacy.
And swim with your
But
car.
Eric, it isn't... look, what Eric is trying to say, I actually get. No, I do get it. But the truth of the matter is this. If the government prioritizes anything, Eric, they'll find money for it. Some of these things are not just prioritized. That's the truth of the matter. Remember, communication, as far as our leaders are concerned, is something that we are regaled with during funerals, during weddings, during harambes. So as far as they're concerned, they're always communicating.
And national holidays.
Yes, national holidays. Then they bore you to tears. But the point is this. It isn't something that appears to be prominent, or it isn't given priority. Because if it was, believe me, the things that we are talking about here would have been achieved, but it isn't given a priority.
Whereas they don't realize the part it plays in actually persuading or dissuading people from behaving in a certain way that would be conducive for governance. So let's say crime, for instance. If the police could communicate crime and crime prevention, you'd find people, there'd be either less crime, and there's ways to go about this. So either less crime, and people would be more readily to work with law enforcement if they could perhaps paint the policemen in better light, whereby we see, because there are great policemen, but all we see, either they're being ridiculed through Inspector Malwa.
This one, let me assist you. It's Mwala. Mwala. There's no Mulua to it. There's no Mwalua. It's just Mwala. No, Mwala. Mala is the milk.
What did I said? Mwala.
No, yes, exactly. Mwala is good. No, then we're good to go. Let's carry on.
Mwala.
There you go.
Yes.
Congratulations, Jerry.
Yes.
Today
is the day.
What we see, and with the police, or indeed in the media, it's negative stories.
Unfortunately.
Now, if you look at the US, for instance, look at how many series there are on cops.
Actually, on Inspector
Blue
Mwala,
Line.
if you actually watch Inspector Mwala, you gather a lot of information on how police and the laws and things that you should report to the police.
Yes.
That's actually the essence
That's
of our
educating
entire
the
script.
citizenry on that.
Very, very
but
educating.
what about painting the police in good light, for instance? I'm teaching basically the government. If anybody from government is listening, this is how you build trust and confidence in institutions. It's not by giving away a free paper, but it's by taking what you have and the platforms you have and actually injecting your messaging into everyday viewing.
And amplifying the same.
Absolutely. And it works for you as well. It's not just buying you sort of favor and trust and confidence, but you also have a citizenry which abides to the law.
Actually, Jerry, you are right. I mean, consider once upon a time, local content wasn't given priority in our media outlets.
No.
And then it was enforced. It was said, this percentage of local content must. Not should. Must. Yes.
For you to get a license. Use of barazas and such is also one very key medium that the government uses. Actually, if you think about the biggest form of communication that the government uses is that going into barazas, local meetings, having small groups of people coming and meeting. So
but
you find
those activities are usually overtaken by politics. This is the problem.
No.
Once you have a forum
those
whereby
ones are not attended by
once you have these
politicians.
fora whereby
These ones are not political events.
You're going to have two people, so you'll have differing opinions. For instance, more than two people.
Actually,
two people?
the
right?
chiefs
So
are
it's not the
usually in
government
charge of
communicating,
that meeting.
Jerry.
No.
but it's a meeting,
Jerry.
and there will be resistance.
Jerry.
No.
Jerry.
No. Have you ever attended a baraza?
No.
Speak from knowledge.
Right. Tell me how a baraza works.
Speak from knowledge.
From the one that Eric has
This
been to.
meeting has been called by a government official. Say it's a local chief, the local county commissioner, and there's specific information that they're coming to give. So they'll bring in other government officials. If, for example, you have somebody from agriculture, somebody from health, whatever the import of this meeting was, that person is the one who's going to speak. It's not a discussion. It's not a political.
There's
like
a
a
question
press
time.
conference.
They allow you to ask
It's not a
questions.
political.
It's like a press conference, but without a TV screen.
No,
so a guy,
no,
it's
the
not a
chief
press
sits there,
conference.
tells them.
It's actually a
So
It's
the
an
scope,
information forum.
It's an information
where they
forum.
tell you what the government is thinking,
You
what they are doing, what they want you to
They
understand
engage
about
with
the
you, and
situation.
their practicals as well. If their practicals are required, it's actually a teaching forum.
Yes.
It's an information
And
dissemination
then
forum.
these people are supposed to go and disseminate that information lower down in
No,
the grassroots.
the information, whatever
been
they're talking
disseminated
about,
there.
will be disseminated. But here's them telling you this is what is going to happen,
and
this
this
is what
is
being planned
told
to
to
do.
leaders who are,
No,
or to
it's
people.
told to the general public.
It's told to the
Who
public.
is in the baraza?
The public.
Anybody can go to
Your
the baraza.
neighborhood. So we are having a baraza in your neighborhood.
Right.
Everybody in your neighborhood is coming to this baraza.
Right.
And then the leaders are the ones who are addressing you. That is the local leadership, the local national government leadership,
Okay,
or
so
sometimes
it's sort of
county leadership.
pre-media times. It's what would have happened before.
It's not
It's
pre-media,
happening
it's even
today.
now.
It's now.
No,
It's
I
still-
know, but it's what would have happened before mass media, in that it's going to be obsolete in years to come, where everybody
It will not be
relies.
It will not be obsolete.
With the youth today, they will not
It
be
will
going to
not be-
You will
barazas. They
just
will
change the
get the
name. You'll
information
stop
to their
calling it a
phones.
baraza and you'll go west and you'll call it a town hall. It will still happen.
Nobody goes to the town hall anymore. That's outdated. People get information on their phone. Before, there was no other mechanisms through which to get information.
We see,
this
like
is what I'm
now,
saying.
we are seeing the US campaigns. We are seeing town halls every other week. Every candidate is addressing a town hall somewhere.
That
Why
is
do- why
maybe
does he
during
just
an
send the
election.
messages through
No,
the
that
social
is
media?
during an election.
40
You want to
seconds
pick
to
up.
the end of the show. Unfortunately, say goodbye.
Goodbye. Tomorrow's Thursday.
Tomorrow is the
week from
seventh day.
Christmas?
Yes, it is.
Seventh day of Christmas.
What did my true love send to me on the seventh day?
I'll tell you tomorrow.
Oh, wait, wait. Thank you for tuning in to The Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Of course, join us again tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. My name is Eric Lati. If we have Nduoko, Jerry Thorne, and C.T. Muga, you'll have uninterrupted music until 3 o'clock. And then Monique will be here to take you home on Spice Drive. And then after that, 7 to 10, you'll have the adults in the room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. The conversation continues on our social media handles, Spice FM KE, Facebook, Spice FM KE, Twitter. Good morning.